The morning Vanessa Monroe fired the man who saved her company, she had no idea she'd just destroyed everything. What happens when a young CEO's snap judgment erases the one person standing between success and total collapse? When pride meets desperation at 3 a.m. in a stranger's apartment? This is the story of a firing that should never have happened, a cyber attack nobody saw coming, and two broken people who had to choose between walking away or saving each other. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the operations center buzzed with that particular frequency that makes your teeth ache if you listen long enough. Vanessa Monroe heard them the second she stepped through the door at 6:47 a.m., her first morning as CEO of Horizon Financial Services. She was 30 years old, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and carrying a leather portfolio that still smelled new. Her heels clicked against the linoleum with the sharp precision of someone who'd practiced walking with authority. The operations center was supposed to be the nerve center of the company. 12 workstations arranged in a semicircle, each with 3 monitors showing real-time transaction data, system health metrics, and security feeds. The walls were lined with larger displays tracking payment flows across 17 states, processing over 4 million transactions daily. This was the room that kept the money moving, the room that couldn't fail, the room that... Someone was asleep at Station 7. Vanessa stopped mid-stride. The man was slumped over his keyboard, head resting on his folded arms, completely motionless except for the steady rise and fall of his shoulders. Around him, his monitors flashed red and yellow warnings that he was clearly ignoring. A half-empty energy drink sat dangerously close to his keyboard, and his shirt, wrinkled and coffee-stained, looked like it had been slept in for days. This was not the impression Vanessa had wanted on her first morning. She'd been brought in specifically to fix this place. Horizon Financial Services had been hemorrhaging efficiency for 3 years under the previous CEO's passive leadership. The board wanted someone young, aggressive, someone who would make hard decisions and cut through the comfortable mediocrity that had taken root. They'd plucked Vanessa from a VP position at a competitor, offered her a salary that made her mother cry with pride, and given her carte blanche to clean house. And here, on day 1, hour 1, was everything wrong with this company personified in one sleeping employee. "Excuse me," Vanessa said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of servers and cooling fans. The man didn't move. Around the room, other employees were arriving for the morning shift. A woman with gray-streaked hair and a Horizon badge that said Maria, 18 years, glanced over, saw Vanessa standing there, and immediately looked away. 2 younger guys near the break room stopped their conversation mid-sentence. Vanessa felt the weight of their attention even though none of them were looking directly at her. They were watching without watching, that careful peripheral awareness that employees develop around new management. "Excuse me," she repeated, louder this time. Still nothing. She walked over to Station 7 and rapped her knuckles sharply on the desk. The monitors showed what looked like cascading error logs, lines of text scrolling faster than she could read them. Warning boxes kept popping up and being dismissed by some automated script. The whole setup looked chaotic, barely controlled. The man stirred. He lifted his head slowly, blinking against the harsh overhead lights, and Vanessa got her first clear look at him. Mid-30s maybe, dark hair sticking up at odd angles, 2 days' worth of stubble on his jaw. His eyes were bloodshot, the kind of red that comes from crying or staring at screens for too long. There was a smudge of something, ink, grease, on his left cheek. He looked at her without recognition, without alarm, without anything resembling professional concern, just a blank, exhausted stare. "Can I help you?" he said. His voice was rough, scratchy. "Can you—" Vanessa actually laughed, a short disbelieving sound. "Can you help me? I'm Vanessa Monroe, the new CEO, and I just found you sleeping at your desk on my first day. So no, I don't think you can help me. I think you need to pack your things." That woke him up. He sat up straighter and she saw the exact moment awareness hit him. The widening of his eyes, the way his hand instinctively went to smooth down his shirt. "Wait, I wasn't sleeping. I was just—" "I have eyes," Vanessa interrupted. "I saw you, head down, completely unresponsive. And look at this mess." She gestured at his monitors. "What is all this? Why are there so many errors? Why aren't you handling them?" "I am handling them," he said, and there was something in his tone. Not quite defiance, but not submission either. Factual. Tired. The scripts are managing the overflow while you sleep? While I monitor the containment. Vanessa crossed her arms. Around them, the room had gone very quiet. Maria was openly watching now, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her mouth. The two guys by the break room had edged closer. Containment, Vanessa repeated. Containment of what? The man, she still didn't know his name, rubbed his face with both hands. When he dropped them, she saw something that looked almost like resignation. Look, I know how this looks, but I've been here for 48 hours straight dealing with... 48 hours? Vanessa cut him off again. That's impossible. OSHA regulations alone. I'm aware of the regulations. Then you're aware you're in violation of company policy, federal law, and basic common sense. Vanessa felt her grip tighten on her portfolio. She'd prepared for resistance, for pushback from the old guard who wouldn't like change. She hadn't expected to find it sleeping at a desk surrounded by error messages. What's your name? Caleb Brooks? Well, Mr. Brooks, I'm going to make this very simple. Sleeping on the job is grounds for immediate termination. I don't care if you've been here 2 days or 2 hours. This is a financial services company. We process millions of dollars in transactions. We don't have the luxury of employees who think desk naps are acceptable. Caleb was looking at her now with an intensity that was almost unnerving. His eyes, despite the bloodshot exhaustion, were sharp, focused. You don't understand what's happening right now. I understand perfectly. You're fired. Ms. Monroe, It's CEO Monroe, actually, and this conversation is over. Vanessa turned to address the room at large. Her voice carried to every corner. Let me be very clear about something. I was brought here to turn this company around. That means accountability. That means standards. That means if you can't handle the responsibilities of your position, there are thousands of people who can. Mr. Brooks will be escorted out by security. I expect the rest of you to use this as a learning opportunity. She turned back to Caleb. HR will contact you about your final paycheck and exit paperwork. Security will be here in 5 minutes to accompany you out. You're not to touch any company equipment or access any systems from this point forward. Caleb stood up. He was taller than she'd expected and thinner. His jeans hung loose on his hips, and she noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Caffeine withdrawal, probably. Or maybe just shock at being fired. You need to listen to me, he said quietly. There's something you need to know before I leave. I don't need to know anything from you except that you're packing your personal belongings. The core system, Caleb continued, as if she hadn't spoken. Don't let anyone restart it. No matter what happens, no matter what errors come up, don't restart the core. Vanessa stared at him. Are you seriously trying to sabotage company operations on your way out? Because that's what it sounds like. I'm trying to prevent... He stopped, took a breath. Behind him, his monitors continued their frantic scrolling. Look in the system logs. Check the timestamps from the last 48 hours. Look at the external access attempts. Then tell me I was sleeping. I'm not going to debate this with you. I left documentation, Caleb said, in the shared drive under Brooks_emergency_protocol. Read it, please, before anyone touches anything. Security will review all your files as part of the exit process. By then it'll be too late. Vanessa felt her patience, already worn thin, snap completely. Mr. Brooks, you're fired. That's final. If you have concerns about system security, you should have reported them through proper channels instead of playing hero and violating every workplace regulation we have. Now, you can either wait here quietly for security, or I can have you removed by force. Which would you prefer? Something shifted in Caleb's expression. The intensity faded, replaced by something that looked almost like pity. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key card, setting it gently on the desk. Then he grabbed a worn backpack from under his chair and started unplugging a small external hard drive from one of his monitors. That's company property, Vanessa said sharply. It's my personal backup. You can check the asset tags if you want. He held it up so she could see the lack of any Horizon stickers. I bring my own storage. Never trusted the company's servers for important things. He unplugged his phone charger, grabbed a framed photograph that had been sitting half-hidden behind one of his monitors, and zipped everything into the backpack. The whole process took maybe 30 seconds. He'd clearly done this before, Vanessa thought, Probably been fired from other jobs for the same kind of unprofessional behavior. Security arrived just as Caleb was slinging the backpack over his shoulder. Two guards, both looking uncomfortable with the situation. One of them, an older black man with sergeant stripes on his uniform, nodded at Caleb. "Hey, Brooks, you okay?" "I'm fine, Marcus." Caleb's voice was steadier now. Resigned. "Just make sure someone reads the documentation, okay? It's important." Marcus glanced at Vanessa, clearly uncertain about his role here. "Mr. Brooks is being terminated for cause," Vanessa said firmly. "Please escort him from the building and ensure he doesn't access any secure areas." "Yes, ma'am," Marcus gestured toward the door. "Come on, Caleb. Let's make this easy." Caleb walked toward the exit, Marcus and the other guard flanking him. At the door, he stopped and turned back. His eyes found Vanessa across the room. 48 hours ago, he said, someone started probing our external firewalls. Not random attacks, targeted. They knew our architecture. They knew where the soft points were. I've been tracking them through the system, building barriers, rerouting critical processes through protected channels. That's what all those errors are. Containment protocols keeping them out of the core payment processing. If you restart the system, all of that protection collapses. And whoever's out there gets exactly what they've been digging for. The room was absolutely silent. Even the equipment seemed to quiet, as if holding its breath. "Read the documentation," Caleb repeated. "Brooks_emergency_protocol, please." Then he turned and walked out, the security guards following. Vanessa stood there for a moment, aware of every eye in the room on her. She could feel their judgment, their uncertainty, their doubt. This was not how she'd wanted to start. But backing down now, showing any uncertainty, would be even worse. "Maria," she said, picking one of the employees at random. "What's your role here?" The gray-haired woman straightened. "Senior Operations Analyst, ma'am. 15 years on the payment processing team." "Good. I want you to review Mr. Brooks' workstation. Check if there are any immediate issues that need addressing. But do it by the book, proper documentation, proper protocols. If there are security concerns, escalate them through IT security, not through whatever improvised system Mr. Brooks had running." "Yes, ma'am." Maria's voice was carefully neutral. Vanessa looked around the room. "I know that wasn't pleasant to witness, but I want to be very clear about the culture we're building here. Excellence requires accountability. If there was a genuine security issue, Mr. Brooks should have reported it properly, not tried to handle it himself while violating basic workplace safety regulations. We have procedures for a reason." No one responded. The silence felt heavy, almost accusatory. "Get back to work," Vanessa said, "and someone clean up Station 7. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking that same authoritative rhythm. But it felt hollow now, performative. In her office, previously the CEO's office, now hers, she closed the door and leaned against it. Her hands were shaking. Vanessa had fired people before. It was never pleasant, but it was necessary. Bad employees dragged down good teams. Lack of standards led to systemic failure. She believed that. She'd built her entire career on the principle that tough decisions, made quickly and decisively, were the mark of good leadership. But something about the way Caleb Brooks had looked at her, that mixture of exhaustion and pity, sat wrong in her chest. She pulled out her phone and texted her mentor, Patricia, who'd been her VP at the previous company. "Fired someone on day 1. Sleeping at desk. Clear violation. But he made claims about security issues. Normal exit paranoia, or should I be concerned?" The response came back almost immediately. "Trust your gut. But document everything. If there are real security concerns, covering your ass is priority 1. Vanessa nodded to herself. "Right. Documentation." She sat down at her new desk, still foreign, still strange, the chair not adjusted to her height yet, and pulled up her computer. She navigated to the shared drive and searched for Brooks_emergency_protocol. The folder was there. She hesitated, her cursor hovering over it. Opening it felt like giving credibility to Caleb's claims, like admitting she might have been too hasty. But Patricia was right. Documentation mattered. If this was nothing, she'd know. If it was something, Vanessa double-clicked. The folder contained dozens of files, log excerpts, network diagrams, screenshots of access attempts. A main document titled read_this_first.txt sat at the top. She opened it, To whoever reads this, it began. My name is Caleb Brooks, Senior Systems Engineer, Employee ID 4782. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. Either the containment failed, or I failed, or management decided I was more trouble than I was worth. Regardless, you need to understand what's happening to this company's infrastructure right now. Vanessa kept reading. The document was detailed, technical, but written clearly enough that even someone without a deep IT background could follow. Caleb outlined how he'd noticed unusual traffic patterns on Wednesday morning, 48 hours ago, just like he'd said, probing attacks against their external APIs, testing for vulnerabilities. He'd flagged it to his supervisor, a man named Derek Simmons, who told him to keep an eye on it, but not to make waves until they were sure. By Wednesday evening, the probes had intensified. Caleb had tracked the attackers as they found and exploited a zero-day vulnerability in one of their legacy payment processing modules they'd gotten inside the network perimeter. That's when Caleb had stopped asking permission. He'd built what he called containment barriers, essentially sandboxing the infected modules while rerouting critical transactions through backup channels he'd set up manually. It was ugly, he admitted in the document, and it was generating massive error logs, but it was keeping the attackers from reaching the core payment processing systems where the real damage could happen. I know this looks bad, he'd written. I know it seems like the system is falling apart, but it's controlled chaos. The attackers think they're making progress. They can see the errors, see the system struggling, but they're actually just spinning their wheels in an isolated environment. As long as the core system stays running on the current configuration, they can't touch the actual transaction data. Then came the warning, written in all caps. Do not restart the core payment system. The containment protocols are written into the active memory. A restart will clear them. All the barriers will collapse. The attackers will have full access to everything within minutes. Millions of dollars and customer data at risk. Vanessa felt something cold settle in her stomach. She kept reading. Caleb had documented everything, timestamps, IP addresses, attack vectors. He'd included technical logs that went way over her head, but the narrative was clear. Someone smart, well-funded, and determined was actively trying to breach Horizon Financial Services systems. And Caleb Brooks had been fighting them off for 2 solid days, alone, at his desk, looking exactly like someone who'd been sleeping on the job. Oh no, Vanessa whispered. She grabbed her phone and called down to the operations center. Maria answered on the second ring. Yes, Miss Monroe. The system, Vanessa said. Station 7, the one Brooks was working on. Has anyone touched it? Not yet, ma'am. We were waiting for IT security to, Don't let anyone touch it. Do you understand? No one restarts anything. No one changes any settings. Not until I get down there. Understood. Maria sounded confused but compliant. Vanessa hung up and opened another file in Caleb's folder, a network diagram showing the attack pathways and his containment structure. It was brilliant, actually. Messy and improvised, but brilliant. He'd essentially turned the attackers' own momentum against them, making them think they were succeeding while actually herding them into a dead end. But it all depended on the system maintaining its current state. She needed to talk to IT security. She needed to talk to the board. She needed to... Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus from security. Brooks asked me to tell you something before I walked him to his car. He said if anything happens to the system, check the external access logs for IP block 45.142.xxx.xxx. He said you'll see them come in about 30 seconds after a restart. He said to tell you he's sorry he couldn't explain better, but that you seemed pretty set on not listening. The message felt like a punch in the chest. Vanessa sat back in her chair, staring at her computer screen full of Caleb Brooks's careful documentation, his detailed warnings, his desperate attempt to protect a company that had just fired him. She'd made a terrible mistake. The question was, what did she do about it? Her first instinct was damage control. She could quietly read him back in, claim there'd been a misunderstanding, offer him his job back with an apology. Keep it contained, keep it quiet. Nobody outside this building needed to know the new CEO had screwed up within an hour of starting. But that felt weak, dishonest. And more importantly, there was still the active threat to deal with. Reading Caleb's documentation was one thing. Actually understanding the technical systems well enough to maintain his containment protocols was something else entirely. She needed him, not as an employee she could control, but as an expert she had to trust. The realization sat bitter on her tongue. Vanessa had spent her entire career building a reputation as someone who didn't need help, who made decisions quickly and stuck to them, who projected confidence even when she felt none. Admitting a mistake this big, this publicly, this quickly, it went against every instinct she had. But the alternative was worse. She pulled up the employee database and searched for Caleb Brooks. His file loaded. Hired 6 years ago as a junior systems engineer, promoted to senior engineer after 3 years. Performance reviews were solid, but not spectacular. His supervisor's notes described him as technically competent but uncommunicative and resistant to procedural changes. His emergency contact was listed as Emma Brooks' daughter, with a note that he was a single parent with primary custody. Vanessa stopped, reading that line again. Single parent, daughter. She thought about the photograph he'd grabbed from his desk. She hadn't seen what it showed, but she'd bet anything it was his kid. She'd just fired a single father, someone who probably couldn't afford to miss a paycheck, someone who'd spent 2 days protecting the company that employed him, exhausting himself to the point of collapse, and gotten fired for his trouble. The cold feeling in her stomach intensified. "Okay," Vanessa said aloud to her empty office. "Okay, fix it. Figure out how to fix it." She picked up her phone and called Marcus again. "Yes, Miss Monroe? Where did Brooks go? Is he still in the building?" "No, ma'am. I walked him to his car about 10 minutes ago. He left." "Did he say where he was going?" "Home, I assume. He looked pretty wiped out." "I need his address." There was a pause. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I can give out employee personal information without—" "I'm the CEO," Vanessa interrupted, "and this is urgent. I need to speak with him immediately about a security matter." Another pause, longer this time, then, "Hold on." She heard the rustle of papers, the click of a keyboard. "He lives at the Riverside Apartments on 52nd Street, Building C, Unit 314. But, Ms. Monroe, if this is company business, maybe it should wait until—" "Thank you, Marcus." She hung up before he could finish. Vanessa stood, grabbed her coat and portfolio, and headed for the elevator. In the parking garage, she found her car, a sensible sedan that she'd bought specifically to not look too flashy, and plugged the address into her GPS. 22 minutes. Traffic permitting. As she pulled out onto the street, her phone rang. The board chairman, Richard Chen. Of course, he'd already heard about the firing. News traveled fast. She let it go to voicemail. Whatever she was about to do, apologize, beg, grovel, it needed to happen face to face, not over the phone where she could maintain professional distance. Caleb Brooks had earned at least that much. The Riverside Apartments turned out to be exactly what she'd expected, a slightly run-down complex with peeling paint and a broken fountain in the courtyard. Not terrible, but not great. The kind of place where people lived when they were making enough to get by, but not enough to get ahead. Building C was at the back of the complex. Vanessa climbed the exterior stairs to the 3rd floor, her heels loud on the metal steps. Unit 314 was at the end of the walkway. She raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. What was she going to say? "Sorry I fired you, my bad. Come back to work?" That wouldn't even begin to cover it. And what if he refused? What if he told her, rightfully, to go to hell? She had no leverage here, no authority. She was just a person who'd made a terrible decision and now had to face the consequences. Vanessa knocked before she could talk herself out of it. Footsteps inside. The door opened a crack, security chain still attached. Through the gap, she could see a little girl, 7, maybe 8 years old, with dark curly hair and her father's sharp eyes. "Hi," the girl said. "Who are you?" "Hi, I work with your dad. Is he home?" "He's sleeping. He's really tired." "I know, and I'm sorry to bother him, but it's really important that I talk to him. It's about work." The girl studied her with an intensity that was unnerving in someone so young. "Are you his boss?" "Yes." "The one who fired him?" Vanessa's throat tightened. "Yes." The girl's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. "He said you wouldn't listen. He said people like you never listen until it's too late." "Emma?" A voice from inside the apartment, hoarse, exhausted. "Who's at the door?" "The lady who fired you," Emma called back. More footsteps, heavier. The door closed, the chain rattled, and then it opened fully. Caleb Brooks stood there in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, looking somehow even more exhausted than he had in the office. His eyes were still bloodshot, his hair even messier. He blinked at Vanessa like he couldn't quite process her presence. "Ms. Monroe," he said flatly, "I read your documentation." He didn't respond, just stood there waiting. "You were right," Vanessa continued, "about everything, the attack, the containment, all of it. I was wrong to fire you. I was wrong not to listen. I need your help." Still nothing. Just that flat, exhausted stare. "Please," she added. Caleb looked over his shoulder at his daughter, who was watching from the couch with the same sharp attention. "Emma, can you go to your room for a minute?" "But, Dad—" "Just for a minute, please." The girl hesitated, then stood and walked down a short hallway, disappearing into what Vanessa assumed was a bedroom. The door didn't quite close all the way. Caleb turned back to Vanessa. "You want me to come back and fix your problem?" "I want—" Vanessa stopped, forcing herself to be honest. "Yes, I need you to come back. The system is still stable, but I don't know how long that lasts. I don't know what to do if something changes, and I don't trust anyone else to understand what you built. Why should I help you?" It was a fair question. Vanessa had no good answer except the truth. "Because I made a mistake," she said. "A big one. I judged you without knowing anything about the situation. I prioritized my own assumptions over your expertise. And now I'm standing here asking you to save me from my own incompetence, which I realize is asking a lot from someone I fired less than an hour ago." Caleb leaned against the doorframe. He looked like he might fall asleep standing up. "You know I'm a single parent. I saw it in your file. Emma's 7. Her mom died when she was 2. Car accident. It's just me and her." Vanessa felt something crack in her chest. "I'm sorry. That job was the only stable thing we had. Health insurance, steady paycheck, flexible hours when she's sick. I can't just bounce back from losing it. There's no safety net here." "I know. Do you?" Caleb's voice was still flat, but there was an edge to it now. "Do you actually know what it's like to be one bad day away from everything falling apart? To have to choose between fixing your car and paying for your kids' school supplies? To lie awake at night doing math in your head, trying to figure out if you can afford to take her to the doctor?" "No," Vanessa admitted. "I don't know what that's like." "Then you don't know what you took from me today." The words hit like physical blows. Vanessa had been wealthy her whole life, not trust fund wealthy, but comfortable. Never worried about bills, never stressed about health care, never had to make those impossible choices. She'd worked hard for her success, absolutely. But she'd worked hard from a foundation of security that people like Caleb simply didn't have. "You're right," she said quietly. "I don't know, but I'm trying to understand, and I'm asking, begging, for the chance to make it right." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, Vanessa could see the apartment, small but clean, with children's drawings taped to the walls and a modest TV playing cartoons on mute. A life built on razor-thin margins. "If I come back," he said finally, "I want it in writing. Reinstatement with back pay for today. Formal apology on the record. And safety protocols, real ones, so this never happens to anyone else. Engineers shouldn't have to work 48 hours straight and risk getting fired for trying to protect the company." "Done," Vanessa said immediately. "All of it. I want to say in how the operations center is run. Real oversight, not just lip service." "Done. And I want Emma's health insurance guaranteed for a year minimum, regardless of employment status. So if you decide to fire me again, she's still covered." That one caught Vanessa off guard, but she nodded. "Done. I'll have HR draw up the paperwork this afternoon." Caleb studied her face, looking for something. Sincerity, maybe. Or just whether she could be trusted. "Okay," he said. "But I need to sleep first. I've been up for—" He trailed off, swaying slightly. "A while. How long until you can—" "4 hours. Maybe 5. I'll set an alarm. The system will hold for another few hours if nobody touches it. Just keep everyone away from Station 7. Don't restart anything. Don't change any configurations. Don't even log into those modules." He rubbed his face. "Actually, you know what? I'll come in now. Just give me 10 minutes to change and—" "No." The word came out sharper than Vanessa intended. "No, you're exhausted. You can barely stand. I'll make sure nothing gets touched. You sleep. We'll manage for a few hours." Something shifted in Caleb's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or suspicion that this might be a trick. "I mean it," Vanessa said. "Sleep. I'll have everything ready when you wake up." He nodded slowly. "Okay. But if anything changes, any new error codes, any weird traffic patterns, you call me immediately. I don't care if I'm sleeping." "I will." Caleb stepped back, his hand on the door. Then he paused. "Miss Monroe? For what it's worth, I get why you did it. Optics matter. New CEO walks in, sees someone asleep at their desk, has to set a tone. I probably would have done the same thing in your position. That doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes it understandable." He almost smiled. "Almost. See you in 4 hours." The door closed. Vanessa stood there for a moment, staring at the scuffed paint, hearing the muffled voices of father and daughter inside. Then she turned and walked back to her car. The drive back to the office felt longer than 22 minutes. Her phone kept buzzing, Richard Chen calling again. Messages from various executives wanting updates. An email from HR asking for clarification on the Brooks termination. She ignored all of it. When she got back to the operations center, Maria was still at Station 7, carefully monitoring the systems without touching anything. "How's it looking?" Vanessa asked. "Stable. Error rates are high but consistent. Whatever Brooks set up, it's holding." Maria glanced up. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am." "Of course. You made the right call bringing him back. He's the best systems engineer we've got. Little rough around the edges, doesn't play politics, but when things go sideways, he's the one you want in the chair." "Why didn't anyone tell me that this morning?" Maria's expression was carefully neutral. "You didn't ask." "Fair enough." Vanessa spent the next 3 hours learning everything she could about the system Caleb had built. She pulled in the IT security team, walked them through his documentation, got them up to speed on the threat. To their credit, they took it seriously once they understood the scope. "This is advanced," the security director, a woman named Janet Park, said, reviewing the attack logs. "A PT-level sophistication. These aren't script kiddies. Someone with serious resources is targeting us." "Why?" Vanessa asked. "We're not a huge company. Why invest this much effort?" "Payment processing systems are valuable targets. Get inside, skim transactions, redirect funds. It's lucrative if you can pull it off. And our security posture," Janet grimaced. "We've been operating on outdated protocols for years. Previous management didn't prioritize IT infrastructure spending. We're vulnerable." "So Caleb just held them off by himself?" "Apparently." Janet sounded almost admiring. "Most engineers would have escalated immediately and waited for official response protocols. Brooks just dove in and started building barriers. It's unorthodox as hell, but it worked." Vanessa's phone alarm went off. 4 hours since she'd left Caleb's apartment. She texted the number Marcus had used to contact her earlier. "Caleb, it's Vanessa Monroe. Systems are stable. Take whatever time you need. I'll have the paperwork ready when you arrive." The response came back 15 minutes later. "On my way." He arrived at 2:30, looking marginally more human. He'd showered, shaved, and changed into clean clothes. His eyes were still tired, but clearer, focused. Vanessa met him in the lobby with the paperwork. Formal reinstatement, back pay, the new safety protocols, Emma's insurance guarantee. Everything he'd asked for, in writing, signed by her and witnessed by HR. Caleb read through it carefully, taking his time. Then he signed. "Okay," he said. "Let's get to work." In the operations center, he slid back into Station 7 like he'd never left. His hands moved across the keyboards with practiced efficiency, pulling up logs, checking traffic patterns, monitoring the containment barriers. "Status looks good," he said after 10 minutes of intense focus. "They're still probing, but they haven't made any progress. Actually backed off a little in the last few hours. Might be regrouping." "What do we do?" Vanessa asked. "Long term? Full security audit, patch management, system hardening. But right now," he glanced up at her, "right now we need to transition from emergency containment to permanent protection. I need to rebuild these barriers as proper firewall rules instead of held together with duct tape and caffeine. It'll take most of the night." "I'll stay." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "You don't need to." But I want to understand, and Vanessa hesitated. I want to see this through. I started today by making a terrible decision. I'd like to end it by helping fix the damage. For the first time since she'd met him, Caleb Brooks smiled. It was small, tired, but genuine. All right, he said. Coffee's in the break room. You're going to need it. The coffee was terrible. Vanessa had tasted worse, barely. But this particular brew from the operations center break room had the distinct flavor of something that had been sitting on a burner since early morning, slowly transforming into a substance that was more punishment than caffeine delivery system. She drank it anyway. Across from her, Caleb was 3 monitors deep in system diagnostics, his fingers moving in that peculiar rhythm of someone who'd stopped thinking about individual keystrokes and started thinking in code. Every few minutes he'd mutter something under his breath, usually variations of, "come on," or "there you are," and make a note in the spiral notebook he kept beside his keyboard. It was close to 5 in the evening now. Most of the day shift had gone home, replaced by a skeleton night crew who gave Vanessa wary glances when they thought she wasn't looking. Word had clearly spread about the firing and subsequent unfiring. She could feel the weight of their judgment, their uncertainty about who she really was. Fair enough. She was still figuring that out herself. Okay, Caleb said suddenly, leaning back in his chair. I think I found their entry point. Want to see something scary? Vanessa set down her coffee and moved to look over his shoulder. The monitor showed lines of access logs, timestamps running down the left side. Here. Caleb highlighted a section dated 3 days ago. Wednesday, 6:47 a.m. Someone sent a phishing email to Derek Simmons, my supervisor. Fake password reset request that looked like it came from IT. He clicked it. You're kidding. I wish. His credentials got harvested. Then they used his admin access to start probing the network from the inside. Caleb scrolled through more logs. They were careful about it. Small queries spread out over hours, testing responses, mapping the architecture. By Wednesday evening, they knew enough to start the real attack. Vanessa stared at the screen. Derek knows about this? Derek went home sick Thursday morning. Stomach bug, supposedly. I tried calling him to report what was happening, but he didn't answer. Left 3 voicemails. He didn't answer during a security breach? Derek's approach to problems is usually to pretend they don't exist until they resolve themselves or become someone else's responsibility. Caleb's voice was matter of fact, not bitter, just stating a truth. I should have escalated higher, but I wasn't sure who to trust. The previous CEO had a habit of shooting messengers, made people cautious about raising red flags. Vanessa thought about that, about a culture where engineers were afraid to report problems, where someone like Caleb would rather fight a cyber attack alone for 48 hours than risk the political consequences of going over his supervisor's head. That changes now, she said. Clear reporting lines, protection for people who raise legitimate concerns. I don't want anyone ever feeling like they have to choose between doing the right thing and keeping their job. Caleb glanced at her. That sounds good on paper. Implementation's harder. I know, but I'm going to try. He nodded and turned back to his screens. Anyway, once they were inside, they started working toward the payment processing core. That's where the money is, literally. Our system handles about 4 million transactions daily, average value around $200 each. If they could inject themselves into that flow, skim even a fraction of a percent, that's millions of dollars. Over time, yeah, and harder to detect than a single big heist. Small amounts across thousands of transactions just look like rounding errors. Vanessa watched as he pulled up another window, this one showing a network diagram with red lines indicating the attack paths. So what did you do? I built a maze. Caleb's fingers traced the paths on screen. Every time they tried to move deeper into the system, I rerouted them through isolated virtual environments. Made it look like they were making progress, but really they were just going in circles. Then I moved all the critical processing to backup servers they didn't know about and locked down the main system. The containment barriers, right, which work great as long as the system stays in its current configuration. But the moment someone restarts the core, all my custom routing collapses. The backup servers go offline, the main system comes back with default settings, and our friends out there get exactly what they've been trying to reach. So we can't restart. Not until I migrate everything to permanent infrastructure, which is what I'm doing now. He opened another terminal window and started typing. I'm rebuilding the barriers as actual firewall rules, moving the critical processes to properly secured servers, and documenting everything so the security team can maintain it. How long will that take? If everything goes smoothly, 10, 12 hours. If I run into complications, he shrugged. Could be longer. Vanessa looked at the clock on the wall. You'll be here all night? Yeah. What about Emma? Caleb's hands paused on the keyboard. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, watches her sometimes. I texted her before I came in. Emma knows the drill. Homework, dinner, bed by 9. She's good about it. There was something in his tone that made Vanessa's chest tight. Resignation, maybe. Or just exhaustion at the constant juggling act of single parenthood and demanding work. How often does this happen? She asked. Late nights? Emergency work? Often enough that Emma's gotten used to it. Not often enough that I figured out how to make it easier. He resumed typing. It is what it is. Vanessa wanted to say something, offer help, express sympathy, anything, but everything that came to mind sounded hollow. Instead, she pulled over a chair and sat down beside him. Walk me through what you're doing, she said. I want to understand. So he did. For the next hour, Caleb explained the architecture of Horizon's payment processing system in terms that gradually made sense. He showed her how transaction data flowed through different modules, how the security layers were supposed to work, and where the vulnerabilities existed. He was patient with her questions, never condescending, just matter-of-fact about the technical details. Somewhere around 7 o'clock, Vanessa's phone rang. Richard Chen, the board chairman. She'd been avoiding his calls all day, but she couldn't put it off forever. I need to take this, she told Caleb, stepping away from the workstation. She answered in the hallway outside the operations center. Richard? Vanessa. His voice was calm but firm. I've been trying to reach you since this morning. I heard about the incident with the systems engineer. Caleb Brooks. Yes, it's handled. Handled how? I'm getting conflicting reports. You fired him, then rehired him, all in the same day? Vanessa leaned against the wall. Through the window in the door, she could see Caleb still working, his face illuminated by the glow of his monitors. I made a mistake this morning. I fired someone without understanding the full context. Once I realized what was actually happening, what he'd been protecting us from, I corrected the mistake. By rehiring him immediately? Yes. There was a long pause. Vanessa, I'm not questioning your judgment, but this kind of instability on day one raises concerns. The board brought you in specifically for your decisiveness, your ability to make tough calls and stick with them. Decisiveness doesn't mean being inflexible, Vanessa said. I made a bad call. Doubling down on it would have been worse than admitting I was wrong. What was the context you were missing? Vanessa explained. The cyber attack, Caleb's containment protocols, the 48 hours he'd spent fighting off intruders while looking like he was sleeping on the job. She kept it concise but detailed enough that Richard would understand the stakes. When she finished, there was another long pause. How bad is the threat? Richard asked finally. Bad. We're talking potential loss of millions in skimmed transactions, compromised customer data, regulatory nightmares. Caleb's containment held, but it was close. We're transitioning to permanent security measures now. Do we need to bring in outside contractors? Security consultants? Maybe for the long-term audit. But right now, Caleb's the one who knows the system. Taking him out of the equation would be dangerous. The same Caleb you fired this morning. Vanessa winced. Yes. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Well, you've certainly made an impression on your first day. Not the impression anyone was expecting, but an impression nonetheless. I'm sorry if this reflects badly on... Actually, Richard interrupted, it might reflect better than you think. Word's already spreading about how you handled this. The employees are talking, you know how it is, and the consensus seems to be that you're someone who can admit mistakes. That's rare in leadership, Vanessa, especially at your level. She hadn't expected that. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly my point. Keep me updated on the security situation, daily reports until this is resolved. And Vanessa, trust your instincts. They seem to be good, even when they're correcting your own mistakes. He hung up. Vanessa stood there for a moment, phone still pressed to her ear, processing. Then she went back inside. Caleb was on his third energy drink, this one a garish purple color that probably violated several FDA regulations. He saw her looking at it and shrugged. Don't judge. I've made worse decisions today. Have you eaten anything? Does caffeine count as food? No. Then no. Vanessa checked her watch. There's a diner 2 blocks from here. Stays open until midnight. I'm ordering food. What do you want? I'm fine. Caleb, you've been running on fumes for 2 days. I've watched you almost fall asleep twice in the last hour. You need actual food. What do you want? He looked at her for a long moment, like he was trying to figure out if this was a test. Then he sighed. Burger, fries, extra pickles if they've got them. Done. Vanessa called the diner and ordered enough food for both of them, plus several of the night shift crew. When it arrived 40 minutes later, delivered by a bored teenager who looked thrilled to get a $50 tip, she distributed it around the operations center. Caleb ate mechanically, eyes still on his screens, but she noticed he finished everything. That was something. Around 9 o'clock, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his whole expression softened in a way Vanessa hadn't seen before. Emma? She guessed. Yeah, checking in before bed. He typed a quick response, then set the phone down. She worries when I work late. She seems like a good kid. She is, smarter than I was at her age. Tougher, too. Pride and pain mixed in his voice. She's had to be. Vanessa wanted to ask more about his wife, about how he managed, about what it was like raising a daughter alone, but it felt invasive. Instead, she asked, does she like school? Loves it, especially science. She's been asking about robotics clubs and programming classes. He smiled slightly. I keep telling her she's going to be way smarter than me by the time she's 12. You could teach her. You're clearly talented at this. Caleb's smile faded. Yeah, well, talent doesn't always translate to stability. I want better for her than scrambling from paycheck to paycheck, hoping the car doesn't break down before payday. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Vanessa thought about her own childhood. Private schools, summer camps, college paid for without loans. The unexamined privilege of never having to worry about money. I meant what I said earlier, she told him, about the changes. I want this place to be somewhere people like you don't have to choose between their job and their health, or their kids. I'll believe it when I see it, Caleb said, but there was no hostility in his tone, just pragmatism. They worked in silence for a while. Vanessa handled the easier tasks, monitoring error logs, watching for unusual traffic patterns, keeping notes in the incident documentation. Caleb handled the complex technical work, his concentration absolute. Around 11, Derek Simmons called. Caleb looked at his phone, hesitated, then answered. Yeah, Derek. Vanessa couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she could see Caleb's jaw tightening. No, I'm at the office, because we're still dealing with the breach. Yes, the one I called you about Thursday. I left 3 messages, Derek. Well, I'm sorry your stomach bug was that bad, but we had a situation. He paused, listening. His free hand clenched into a fist. That's not what happened. No, listen to me. I didn't go around you. I tried to reach you first. When you didn't respond, I had to make a call. I documented everything. Derek, they were inside our network. I couldn't just wait. Another pause. Caleb closed his eyes. You know what? Fine. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But right now I've got about 6 more hours of work to do. So unless you're offering to help, I need to go. He hung up without waiting for a response. Problem? Vanessa asked. Derek's upset that I made him look bad by handling the security issue without his approval. Caleb set his phone down harder than necessary. Apparently the fact that I couldn't reach him for 2 days is less important than maintaining chain of command. He's your supervisor? Technically, though mostly he just takes credit for other people's work and deflects blame when things go wrong. Vanessa filed that information away. How long have you been working under him? 3 years, since the last restructuring. And before that? Before that, I reported to Linda Martinez, who actually knew what she was doing. But she got poached by a competitor, and Derek got promoted into her spot. Caleb pulled up another screen of code. Corporate politics. You promote the person who's best at managing up, not the person who's best at the actual job. That's not how I operate. Good. But you're one person. And Derek's been here 8 years. He's got relationships, allies. You start making waves, he'll push back. Vanessa thought about that. About the entrenched power structures she was walking into, the informal networks that could undermine even a CEO if they wanted to. She'd dealt with office politics before, but never from the very top. Never with this much at stake. Let me worry about Derek, she said. You focus on the system. Caleb gave her a skeptical look but didn't argue. Midnight came and went. The operations center was quiet except for the hum of equipment and the soft clacking of Caleb's keyboard. Vanessa had moved to a different workstation, reading through employee files and incident reports, trying to get a sense of the company she'd inherited. It wasn't pretty. Horizon Financial Services had been coasting for years on legacy systems and institutional inertia. The previous CEO, a man named Walter Hutchins, had prioritized short-term profits over long-term infrastructure investments. Security updates were deferred. Training budgets were cut. Talented employees left and were replaced with cheaper, less experienced hires. No wonder they were vulnerable to attacks like this. Around 1 a.m, Caleb made a sound somewhere between triumph and exhaustion. Got it, he said. Primary firewall rules are in place. The backup servers are properly secured. I'm doing final testing now, but I think we're good. You're sure? As sure as I can be without running full penetration tests, which would take another week. He pulled up a monitoring dashboard. Look, clean traffic patterns. No unusual access attempts. The attackers are still out there, but they can't get in anymore. Vanessa studied the screen. The data meant more to her now than it would have 12 hours ago, thanks to Caleb's patient explanations. She could see what he meant. The system looked stable, protected, normal. What about the containment barriers, she asked. Your temporary fixes? I'm going to migrate us off them gradually over the next few days. Switch from emergency protocols to standard security infrastructure. But the immediate crisis is over. So we could restart the core system now? We could. Probably shouldn't until I've done more testing, but yeah. The protection is baked in now, not dependent on temporary configurations. Vanessa felt something release in her chest. Tension she hadn't realized she was carrying. You did it. We did it, Caleb corrected. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since they'd started working. You didn't have to stay. Most executives would have delegated this and gone home. I wanted to understand. And I owed you that much after this morning. You didn't owe me anything. You're the CEO. That doesn't mean I can't be wrong, or that I shouldn't try to fix my mistakes. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know, when they announced you were taking over, everyone was nervous, young, ambitious, brought in specifically to shake things up. We figured you'd start cutting heads, bringing in your own people, making changes just to prove you could. And instead I proved them right by firing you. Instead you proved you're human, which is actually more reassuring than I thought it would be. Vanessa didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. They spent another hour documenting everything, detailed notes on the attack timeline, the containment measures, the permanent security improvements. Caleb was meticulous about it, making sure everything was clear enough that another engineer could pick up where he left off if needed. By 3 a.m, they were both running on fumes. Vanessa's eyes burned from staring at screens. Caleb looked like he might actually pass out if he stopped moving. Go home, Vanessa told him. I'll have the night shift monitor things. If anything changes, they'll call you. I should stay until... Caleb, you've been up for 70 hours. Go home, hug your daughter, sleep in an actual bed. He wanted to argue. She could see it in his face, but exhaustion won. Okay, but I'm coming in early tomorrow to run more tests. Afternoon, Vanessa corrected. Come in tomorrow afternoon, after you've slept for at least 8 hours. I don't need... That's not a request. It's a direct order from your CEO. Caleb blinked at her. Then slowly he smiled. Yes, ma'am. Yes. He gathered his things, the backpack, the external hard drive, the photo of Emma that he'd brought back with him. At the door he paused. Thank you, he said, for listening, eventually. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when you had every reason to. He nodded once, then left. Vanessa stayed another hour talking with the night shift supervisor about monitoring protocols and escalation procedures. Then she drove home to her new apartment, still half unpacked, still unfamiliar, and collapsed into bed with her clothes on. She woke up 6 hours later to 17 missed calls and 43 unread emails. The first call was from Janet Park, the IT security director, reporting that overnight monitoring showed no further intrusion attempts. The attackers seemed to have given up or moved on to easier targets. The first email was from Derek Simmons, demanding a meeting to discuss unauthorized security protocols implemented without proper management approval. Vanessa deleted it and called Janet instead. "How's the system looking?" she asked. "Stable. Brooks did good work. Really good work, actually. I've been in this field for 20 years, and what he built in 48 hours under pressure would take most teams a week with full resources." "So we're secure?" "For now. But, Miss Monroe, we need to talk about long-term infrastructure. This attack exposed some serious vulnerabilities. We need a complete security overhaul." "Set up a meeting for Monday. Bring recommendations and budget estimates. I want to fix this properly." She hung up and looked at the time. 10 in the morning. Caleb was, hopefully, still sleeping. She texted him anyway. "Don't come in until you're actually rested. That's an order. The system is stable. Take care of yourself and Emma." His response came back 20 minutes later. "Emma made me promise to sleep until noon. Apparently I snore when I'm this tired. See you this afternoon." Vanessa smiled at that. Then she got dressed, drank more terrible coffee, and headed back to the office. The day shift was in full swing when she arrived. Maria waved from her station. A few other employees nodded respectfully as she passed. The atmosphere felt different somehow, less wary, more cautiously hopeful. She spent the morning in meetings, briefing the executive team on the security incident, fielding questions from concerned board members, reviewing preliminary damage assessments with finance. Everyone wanted to know how bad it could have been. "Worst case scenario," Janet Park said during one meeting, "complete compromise of our payment processing systems. Customer data exposed. Transaction records altered or deleted. Financial losses in the millions, regulatory fines in the tens of millions, reputational damage that could have put us out of business." "And best case?" someone asked. Janet looked at Vanessa. "Best case is what actually happened. One very dedicated engineer spent his entire weekend fighting off attackers while nobody noticed. Then the new CEO figured out what was happening and backed him up. We avoided disaster by about 6 inches and a lot of luck." "Not luck," Vanessa corrected. "Skill, Caleb Brooks' skill." She made sure that was in the official incident report, made sure his name was attached to every document describing the response, made sure everyone knew exactly who had saved them. Around 2 in the afternoon, Caleb arrived. He looked almost human again, rested, clean, steady on his feet. He'd even shaved properly. "How's Emma?" Vanessa asked when she saw him in the operations center, confused about why I'm home on a school day, but happy about it. "Mrs. Chen took her to the park. I promised I'd be home for dinner." He sat down at his station and pulled up the monitoring dashboards. "Everything looks good. No new attempts since early this morning." Janet said they probably moved on. "Maybe. Or maybe they're regrouping. I want to keep elevated monitoring for at least a week." "Whatever you think is best." Derek Simmons appeared in the doorway. "Brooks, my office. Now." Caleb's expression went carefully neutral. "I'm in the middle of system checks." "I don't care. We need to talk about your complete disregard for proper procedures." "Derek." Vanessa stepped forward. "Caleb's running critical security monitoring. Whatever you need to discuss can wait until he's finished." Derek's eyes flicked to her, then back to Caleb. "This doesn't concern you, Ms. Monroe." "Actually, it does. Caleb reports to you, but you report to me. And I'm telling you that security monitoring takes priority over personnel discussions." "With all due respect, no." Vanessa's voice was firm but calm. "Derek, I've read the incident reports. I know you were unreachable during a critical security event. I know Caleb tried to contact you multiple times, so before you start criticizing his procedure violations, maybe you should think about your own." Derek's face flushed red. "I was sick. For 48 hours straight? Too sick to answer a phone call about a cyber attack on our systems? I don't appreciate the implication, and I don't appreciate supervisors who abandon their teams during crises." Vanessa kept her tone level. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to your office. Caleb's going to finish his security checks. Then you, me, Janet Park, and HR are going to have a meeting about incident response protocols and chain of command during emergencies. Does that work for you? Derek stared at her. The operations center had gone very quiet. Everyone was watching, pretending not to watch. Fine, Derek said finally, but this conversation isn't over. He left. Caleb let out a long breath. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He was out of line. He's going to make my life difficult now. Only if he's still your supervisor, which is something I'm reconsidering. Vanessa pulled over a chair. But that's a conversation for later. Right now, show me what you're monitoring. They spent the next hour going over system security. Caleb explained the new firewall configurations, the intrusion detection systems, the automated alerts he'd set up. Vanessa listened, asked questions, took notes. She was starting to understand not just the what, but the why of their infrastructure. Around 4 o'clock, Janet Park stopped by with preliminary results from her security audit. It's worse than I thought, she said, spreading printouts across the desk. We've got outdated SSL certificates, unpatched vulnerabilities going back 3 years, and access controls that are basically Swiss cheese. How much to fix it? Vanessa asked. Properly, 2 million minimum, maybe 3. That's a significant budget item. It's a bigger budget item if we get breached again and lose everything. Vanessa looked at Caleb. What do you think? I think Janet's being conservative. I'd estimate closer to 4 million if we want to do it right, but she's correct that the alternative is worse. Okay, Vanessa made a decision. Janet, prepare a full proposal. Include everything we need for proper security infrastructure. I'll present it to the board next week. They might push back on the cost, Janet warned. Then I'll convince them. This isn't negotiable anymore. After Janet left, Caleb looked at Vanessa with something like respect. You know that's going to be a fight, right? The board's been rejecting security budget increases for years. I know, but I'd rather fight that battle than explain to our customers why their data got stolen because we were too cheap to invest in protection. Spoken like someone who's never dealt with Walter Hutchins' cost-cutting legacy. Then it's a good thing Walter Hutchins isn't CEO anymore. Caleb almost smiled. Yeah, I guess it is. They worked together until 6, when Caleb had to leave for dinner with Emma. Vanessa walked him to the elevator. Same time tomorrow? She asked. I'll be here at 8. Make it 9. You need normal hours now that the crisis is over. 9 it is. The elevator doors started to close, then Caleb stuck his hand out to stop them. Hey, Miss Monroe. Vanessa. You can call me Vanessa. Vanessa, then. I just wanted to say, today was better than yesterday. I mean, significantly better. For both of us, she agreed. He nodded and let the doors close. Vanessa stood there for a moment, watching the floor numbers descend. Then she went back to her office and started drafting the security budget proposal. It was going to be a fight, but she'd been preparing for fights her entire career. What she hadn't been preparing for was the strange feeling in her chest every time Caleb Brooks looked at her with those sharp, exhausted eyes and said something devastatingly honest. She pushed the thought away and focused on the numbers. There would be time later to examine what that feeling meant. Right now, she had a company to save and a board to convince. The work, at least, was familiar territory. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 2, which gave Vanessa 5 days to build her case for the security overhaul. She spent most of that week buried in financial projections and risk assessments, trying to find a way to make $4 million sound reasonable to a group of people who'd spent the last 3 years rejecting budget increases that cost a tenth of that. Caleb helped, though he didn't seem thrilled about it. I'm an engineer, not a salesman, he said Wednesday afternoon, staring at the PowerPoint presentation Vanessa had drafted. They were in her office, the door closed against interruptions. You want me to stand up in front of the board and explain why we need money? That's not my strength. You don't have to sell anything, just explain the technical reality. Show them what happened, what could have happened, and what will happen if we don't fix this properly. They won't care about technical reality. They'll care about quarterly earnings. Then I'll handle the quarterly earnings part. But Caleb, you're the one who lived through this. You're the one who knows exactly how close we came to disaster. That carries weight. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Fine, but I'm not wearing a tie. I wouldn't dream of asking you to. They worked through the presentation together, Caleb translating complex security concepts into language that board members might actually understand. Vanessa took notes, restructured slides, tried to build a narrative that would resonate with people whose primary concern was shareholder value. Around 4 o'clock, Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression shifted. Not quite worry, but something close. Problem? Vanessa asked. Emma's school. She's in the nurse's office with a fever. He was already standing, gathering his things. I need to pick her up. Go! We can finish this later. The presentation? We'll still be here tomorrow. Your daughter needs you now. Caleb hesitated, caught between professional obligation and parental responsibility. Vanessa recognized the conflict. She'd seen it in her own mother's face growing up, back before her father's business took off, and money stopped being a concern. I'll have my phone, Caleb said finally. If you need anything, I won't. Go. He left, moving fast. Vanessa watched him through the office window as he jogged toward the elevator, phone already pressed to his ear, probably calling the school, letting them know he was on his way. She turned back to the presentation and tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting. She wondered if Emma was okay, if Caleb had someone to help him when things like this happened, if he ever got to just be a father without the constant weight of being the only parent, the only provider, the only safety net. Her phone rang. Derek Simmons. Vanessa let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Miss Monroe, we need to discuss the operations center reorganization you're proposing. I've been Brooks' supervisor for 3 years and suddenly I'm being cut out of security decisions? This is unacceptable. I expect a meeting to address this immediately. Vanessa deleted the message. She'd been planning to have that conversation with Derek anyway, but on her timeline, not his. The man had a talent for making everything about his own ego. She spent the rest of the afternoon refining the presentation, building contingency arguments, anticipating every possible objection the board might raise. By 7, she was exhausted and hungry and sick of looking at spreadsheets. Her phone buzzed, a text from Caleb. Emma's got strep throat. Doctor says she'll be fine, but needs to stay home tomorrow. I'm sorry about the presentation. Vanessa stared at the message for a moment, then called him. He answered on the second ring, sounding tired. Hey, how is she? Miserable. High fever, sore throat. The antibiotics should help, but they take a day or two to kick in. Do you need anything? I could send over food or... We're okay. Mrs. Chen brought soup. Emma's sleeping now. Vanessa could hear the exhaustion in his voice, the strain of another crisis, another thing to manage alone. Take tomorrow off. Stay home with her. I can work remotely. Review security logs. Caleb, no. Your daughter is sick. Be her father tomorrow. Everything else can wait. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, thank you. Email me if you think of anything else the presentation needs. Otherwise, I'll see you Friday. Good luck with the board. I'll need it. She hung up and sat there for a while, thinking about Caleb sitting in his small apartment with his sick daughter, trying to figure out how to be present for her while worrying about work. The constant calculation of single parenthood, time, money, energy, all of it finite, none of it enough. Vanessa had never wanted kids. Her career had always come first, and she'd never apologized for that choice. But watching Caleb navigate fatherhood and professional responsibility with equal dedication made her wonder if maybe she'd been missing something. Not kids, necessarily, but that kind of fierce, protective love for something beyond yourself. She shook off the thought and went back to work. Thursday arrived too fast. Vanessa spent the morning rehearsing her presentation, anticipating questions, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Janet Park stopped by at noon with updated security audit findings that somehow made everything look even worse than before. Someone's going to ask why we didn't catch this sooner, Janet warned. You need a good answer for that. The truth? Previous management deprioritized IT infrastructure for years. We were operating on outdated systems with inadequate monitoring. That's blaming Walter Hutchins. The board might not like that. The board hired me specifically to fix Walter Hutchins' mistakes. They can't have it both ways. Janet smiled grimly. Fair enough. Good luck in there. The boardroom was on the top floor, all glass walls and expensive furniture designed to intimidate. Vanessa arrived 15 minutes early and set up her presentation, testing the projector, making sure every slide loaded correctly. Small details, but they mattered. Appearing unprepared would undermine everything. The board members trickled in around two. Richard Chen first, offering Vanessa an encouraging nod. Then Patricia Wu, the CFO. Marcus Okafor, who ran business development. Three others whose names Vanessa had memorized but whose faces still felt unfamiliar. Derek Simmons arrived last, looking smug. Vanessa hadn't invited him, but as operations director he technically had standing to attend board meetings. She'd been hoping he wouldn't bother. "Miss Monroe," Richard said once everyone was seated, "I believe you have a presentation for us regarding the recent security incident?" "Yes, thank you." Vanessa stood, clicked to the first slide. Last week, Horizon Financial Services was targeted by a sophisticated cyber attack that could have resulted in millions of dollars in losses and catastrophic data breaches. We avoided disaster, but only barely. What I'm about to show you is why we can't afford to be that lucky again. She walked them through it methodically. The timeline of the attack, the vulnerabilities that made it possible, Caleb's emergency response and what it had revealed about their infrastructure, the preliminary security audit findings that showed systematic neglect across every IT system. "Our current security posture is unacceptable," Vanessa said, clicking to a slide that showed their outdated certificate authorities and unpatched systems. "We're operating on infrastructure that was barely adequate 5 years ago and is now actively dangerous. Any competent attacker could exploit what we have. We got lucky this time because we had one very skilled engineer who happened to notice the intrusion and had the technical ability to respond. We can't build our security strategy around getting lucky." Patricia Wu raised her hand. "What's the proposed budget for remediation?" $4 million over 18 months. That covers complete security infrastructure overhaul, updated systems, proper monitoring tools, and additional security personnel. The room went very quiet. "4 million, Marcus Okafor repeated. "That's significant." "It's necessary," Vanessa countered. "The alternative is continuing to operate with systems that are actively vulnerable. The next attack might not be something we can contain with improvised solutions." "Can we phase this in over a longer period?" Patricia asked. "Spread the cost across 3 years instead of 18 months? "We could, but every month we delay is another month we're exposed. And frankly, given the regulatory environment around financial data protection, we're already courting serious liability just by operating with our current infrastructure." Derek cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Ms. Monroe, I think you're overstating the risk. We've been running these systems for years without major incidents." Vanessa turned to look at him. "We just had a major incident, one that you were unavailable to respond to. A minor probe that was handled through existing protocols. Boom. A coordinated attack that compromised our network perimeter and was only stopped because Caleb Brooks violated every workplace regulation we have to build emergency containment measures." Vanessa's voice was sharp. "Derek, I've read your incident reports from the last 3 years. You've been systematically minimizing security concerns and deferring critical updates. That ends now." Derek's face flushed. "I was following budget constraints established by previous management. Previous management isn't here anymore, I am. And I'm telling you that our security infrastructure is inadequate." Richard held up a hand. "Let's keep this professional. Derek, do you have specific concerns about the proposal that we should address?" Derek looked like he wanted to argue more, but he just shook his head. "I think we should get a second opinion from an outside consultant before committing to this level of expenditure." "Already arranged," Vanessa said. "I've contracted with CyberGuard Solutions to conduct an independent security audit. Their preliminary findings align with Janet Park's internal assessment. I'll have their full report next week." That seemed to mollify some of the board members, but Patricia still looked uncomfortable. $4 million is a substantial ask in your second week as CEO. The optics of that are better than the optics of a data breach that exposes customer information and destroys our reputation," Vanessa interrupted. "Patricia, I understand this is a large investment, but consider the alternative cost. One successful attack could result in regulatory fines, legal liability, customer compensation, and reputational damage that would dwarf $4 million. "She's right," Richard said quietly. "I've been reviewing similar incidents in the industry. The average cost of a major data breach in financial services is north of 12 million when you factor in all the downstream effects. Patricia nodded slowly. What's the timeline for implementation? Phase 1 starts immediately. Critical vulnerabilities, updated certificates, enhanced monitoring. That's about $800,000. Phase 2 is infrastructure upgrades over the next 6 months, another $1.5 million. Phase 3 is ongoing security operations improvements, the remaining $1.7 million spread across the following year. And staffing? Marcus asked. Are we hiring additional personnel? 2 additional security engineers and 1 dedicated security operations manager. Their salaries are included in the budget. The questions continued for another hour. Vanessa answered each one carefully, supporting her arguments with data from the security audit, industry benchmarks, regulatory requirements. She could feel Derek's hostility radiating from across the table, but she didn't let it distract her. Finally, Richard called for a vote. All in favor of approving the security infrastructure budget as presented? 5 hands went up. Patricia hesitated, then raised hers as well. Motion carries. Vanessa, you have authorization to proceed. I want monthly progress reports and immediate notification of any cost overruns. Understood. Thank you. The meeting adjourned. Derek left immediately without speaking to anyone. The other board members lingered to ask follow-up questions, and Vanessa spent another 30 minutes going over implementation details. When she finally made it back to her office, she was exhausted but relieved. $4 million. The board had actually approved it. She'd won the fight that Caleb had warned her about. She texted him. Board approved the full security budget. We start implementation Monday. His response came back almost immediately. Seriously? All 4 million? All 4 million. How's Emma? Fever's down. She's watching cartoons and complaining that the antibiotics taste bad. I'm calling that a win. Vanessa smiled at her phone. Definite win. See you tomorrow? I'll be there. Friday morning brought new problems. Vanessa arrived at 8 to find an email from Walter Hutchins, the former CEO, demanding a meeting to discuss concerning reports about operational changes and excessive spending. Apparently, Derek had been talking to him, painting Vanessa's security initiative as reckless budget expansion. She forwarded the email to Richard Chen with a note. Thoughts on how to handle? His response was immediate. Ignore him. Walter has no standing here anymore. If he continues to interfere, I'll handle it. Vanessa appreciated the support, but she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Walter still had relationships throughout the company, people who'd been loyal to him for years. Undermining the new CEO to restore the old guard was a classic corporate power play. Caleb arrived at 9, looking better than he had in days. Emma's with Mrs. Chen. Fever's gone, but the doctor said keep her home through the weekend just to be safe. That's good. How are you holding up? Tired, but that's normal. He sat down at his workstation and pulled up the security monitoring dashboards. Everything look okay while I was out? Completely quiet. No incidents, no unusual traffic. Janet's been running hourly checks. Good. Caleb scrolled through several screens of logs, his expression focused. I want to start implementing the Phase 1 upgrades next week. Updated SSL certificates, patched vulnerabilities, enhanced firewall rules. Get the critical stuff locked down before we tackle the bigger infrastructure changes. Sounds good. You'll be leading that? Unless you want to give it to Derek. Vanessa snorted. Derek's not leading anything security related. In fact, I'm restructuring the operations department, creating a separate security division that reports directly to me instead of through him. Caleb looked up sharply. You're serious? Completely. Janet will head it up, and you'll be senior security engineer with a significant raise. Derek can keep managing the operational side, but security decisions go through the new division. He's going to lose his mind. Probably, but he's already demonstrated that he can't be trusted with security responsibility. I'm not leaving that in his hands anymore. Caleb was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he said, You know this is going to create enemies, right? Derek has friends here, people who'll see this as you coming in and destroying established hierarchies. I know, but I'd rather have enemies who are wrong than friends who are incompetent. He almost smiled. That's a good line. Very CEO-ish. Thank you. I've been practicing. They worked through the morning, planning the Phase 1 implementation, coordinating with Janet's team, reviewing the independent security audit that CyberGuard had delivered overnight. The findings were somehow even worse than Vanessa had expected. The auditors had identified 17 critical vulnerabilities, 43 high-priority issues, and over 100 medium-risk problems. How did we survive this long? Vanessa asked, staring at the report. Luck, Caleb said, and the fact that most attackers go for easier targets. We weren't worth the effort until someone decided we were. Do we know who was behind the attack? The IP addresses trace back to Eastern Europe, probably Russia or Ukraine, but they were using proxy servers and VPNs, so it's hard to say definitively. Could be organized crime, could be state-sponsored, could be corporate espionage. We'll probably never know for sure. The thought was unsettling. Someone out there had tried to breach their systems, had gotten close enough to cause real damage, and they just moved on when Caleb's defenses held. No arrests, no consequences, just a failed attempt that faded into the background noise of internet crime. Does that bother you? Vanessa asked. Not knowing? Caleb shrugged. I'd like to know, but mostly I'm just glad they didn't succeed. Around noon, Derek appeared in the operations center doorway. His expression was carefully neutral, but Vanessa could see the anger underneath. Ms. Monroe, I need to speak with you, privately. I'm in the middle of now. Vanessa exchanged a glance with Caleb, who looked wary. Then she stood. Fine. My office. Derek didn't speak until they were behind closed doors. Then he turned on her, all pretense of professionalism gone. You're restructuring my department without consulting me? I'm creating a new security division. That's not the same as restructuring your department. You're taking half my staff and putting them under Janet Park's supervision. That's absolutely restructuring my department. Your department failed to properly manage security for years. I'm correcting that. By humiliating me in front of the entire company, Derek's voice was rising, by making it look like I'm incompetent? I'm not making you look incompetent, Derek. Your own actions did that. You were unreachable during a critical security incident. You minimized threats, deferred necessary updates, and created a culture where engineers were afraid to report problems. Those are facts. I was working within budget constraints. You were taking the path of least resistance, and now I'm fixing the damage. Derek's hands clenched into fists at his sides. I've been with this company for 8 years. I've survived 3 restructurings, 2 CEOs, and a board that changes priorities every quarter. I know how this place works. You're just some outsider who got lucky with a single crisis. That single crisis could have destroyed this company, and it happened on your watch. It was handled by Caleb Brooks, who you've spent 3 years treating like he's disposable. Vanessa kept her voice level, but she could feel her anger building. You want to know why I'm restructuring? Because I don't trust you. You've demonstrated poor judgment, negligent oversight, and a complete inability to prioritize what actually matters. So yes, security is being taken out of your hands. If you have a problem with that, take it up with the board. Derek stared at her, his face red with fury. This isn't over. Actually, it is. You can either accept the new organizational structure and continue doing your job, or you can resign. Those are your options. You can't fire me without cause. I'm not firing you, I'm restructuring. Perfectly legal and already approved by the board. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Derek looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he turned and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Vanessa sat down at her desk and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline from the confrontation. She'd known this was coming, had prepared for it, but actually having the fight was different from anticipating it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Heard the door slam from here. You okay? She smiled despite herself. Fine. Derek's having feelings about the restructuring. Want me to have security escort him out? Not yet, but keep the option ready. She spent the rest of the afternoon dealing with the fallout. 3 employees from Derek's team requested meetings to discuss the organizational changes. 2 were legitimately concerned about how it would affect their roles. The third, a guy named Brad who'd been Derek's right hand for years, was clearly fishing for information to report back. Vanessa was patient with all of them, explaining the rationale, answering questions, making it clear that the restructuring wasn't personal. But she could feel the undercurrent of tension. Derek was already working to undermine her, rallying his allies, framing the changes as executive overreach. By 5 o'clock, she was exhausted. She found Caleb still at his workstation, deep in configuration files. You're still here, she said. Wanted to get the SSL certificate updates mapped out before the weekend. We can start deploying Monday if this looks good. He gestured at his screen, which showed a complex deployment schedule. It's Friday night. Don't you want to go home to Emma? Mrs. Chen's got her until 7, and honestly, it's easier to concentrate here. At home, I've got a 7-year-old who wants help with homework and asks approximately 600 questions per hour. Vanessa laughed. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also the best part of my day, so. He saved his work and started shutting down his systems. You doing okay after the thing with Derek? How did you know about that? You just told me, but also everyone knows. Word travels fast here. Of course it does. Vanessa rubbed her face. Am I making a mistake? Restructuring this aggressively? Caleb considered the question seriously. Honestly, I don't know. But I know the old structure wasn't working. Derek's been coasting on relationships and politics for years while actual problems got ignored. Something had to change. That doesn't mean this is the right change. Maybe not. But it's a change, and that's more than we've had in a while. People are nervous, but they're also paying attention. That's not nothing. He grabbed his backpack and stood. You want some advice from someone who's been here way longer than you? Always. Stop second-guessing yourself. You made a call. Own it. The people who matter will respect you for having the spine to make hard decisions. The people who don't matter will complain no matter what you do. That's surprisingly wise for someone who was asleep at their desk a week ago. I contain multitudes. He headed for the door, then paused. Also get some sleep this weekend. You look like hell. Thanks. You really know how to compliment a person. It's a gift. After he left, Vanessa sat alone in the operations center for a while, watching the monitoring dashboard cycle through their data. Everything looked stable, quiet, normal. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something, that somewhere in the complexity of the systems Caleb had built, in the organizational restructuring she'd forced through, in the political battles brewing with Derek and his allies, there was a problem she hadn't anticipated. She just didn't know what it was yet. The weekend passed without incident. Vanessa spent Saturday reviewing implementation plans and Sunday hiking in the state park north of the city, trying to clear her head. Emma sent her a text Sunday evening. Somehow Caleb had given his daughter her number that just said, "Thank you for not firing my dad again," with a string of heart emojis. Vanessa stared at that message for a long time before responding. Monday morning she arrived early, ready to oversee the start of Phase 1 implementation. Caleb was already there, along with Janet and 3 engineers from the security team. They'd planned everything meticulously. The SSL updates would roll out in stages, starting with non-critical systems and working up to the payment processing core. This should be smooth, Janet said. We're doing everything during low-traffic windows, and we've got rollback procedures in case anything breaks. Should be smooth, Vanessa repeated. That's not the same as will be smooth. Nothing's ever guaranteed, but we've done our homework. The update started at 6 a.m. For the first few hours, everything went exactly according to plan. Systems came down briefly, got their new certificates, came back online. No errors, no unexpected behavior, just clean deployments. Vanessa started to relax. That was her first mistake. At 10:47 a.m., alarms started going off across the operations center. Caleb's head snapped up from his workstation. What the hell? Vanessa rushed over to look at his screens. Error messages were cascading faster than she could read them. Transaction processing had slowed to a crawl. System health metrics were dropping into red zones. What's happening? She demanded. I don't know. The certificate updates should have been transparent to the transaction layer. Caleb's fingers were flying across his keyboard, pulling up logs, checking configurations. This doesn't make sense. Janet appeared at his shoulder. We've got reports from the customer service line. Transactions are timing out. Payments aren't processing. Rollback, Vanessa said immediately. Revert to the old certificates. It's not that simple, Caleb said, still typing frantically. The old certificates are already expired. We can't just switch back. Then what do we do? I'm trying to figure that out. More alarms, more error messages. The operations center had gone from quiet efficiency to controlled chaos in under 2 minutes. Engineers were shouting across workstations, trying to isolate the problem. Phones were ringing, customer service, the executive team, probably the board. Vanessa's phone buzzed. Richard Chen. We have a problem, she told him without preamble. I'm aware. How bad? Payment processing is down. We're working on it. How long? I don't know yet. Vanessa, every minute we're offline costs us thousands of dollars. Not to mention the regulatory implications. I'm aware, Richard. We're handling it. She hung up and looked at Caleb. Talk to me. The new certificates are causing authentication failures with some of our legacy payment modules. They're trying to verify the certificates against outdated trust chains that don't recognize the new certificate authority. His voice was tight with concentration. I need to rebuild the trust chain manually for each affected module. How long will that take? Hours. Maybe longer if the affected modules are more widespread than I think. We don't have hours. Then I don't know what to tell you. Derek appeared in the doorway, looking vindicated. So this is what happens when you rush major infrastructure changes without proper testing. Maybe we should have followed established procedures instead of letting Brooks play cowboy again. Vanessa ignored him. Caleb, what if we restart the core system? Would that clear the authentication failures? Caleb went very still. Then he turned to look at her, and his expression made her stomach drop. The core system, he said slowly. The one I told you not to restart under any circumstances. That was about the containment barriers. You said the permanent security measures were in place. They are. But the permanent measures include the new certificate chain. Restarting the core won't help. It'll just reload the same configuration that's causing the problem. So what happens if we restart it anyway? Caleb's jaw tightened. If we restart the core while the authentication chain is broken, we could corrupt the transaction database. Every payment that's currently in pending status, we're talking hundreds of thousands of transactions, could fail completely instead of just timing out. How much money? Conservatively? $50 million in transactions, maybe more. The room went very quiet. Vanessa felt something cold settle in her chest. This was bad. This was potentially company-ending bad, and it had happened because she'd pushed for aggressive implementation of security measures that clearly hadn't been tested thoroughly enough. Okay, she said, forcing her voice to stay calm. What do we need to do? I need access to the legacy module configurations. I need to rebuild the trust chain, and I need everyone to stop panicking and let me work. You heard him, Vanessa said loudly, addressing the whole operations center. Nobody touches the core system. Nobody restarts anything. Caleb has this. Derek scoffed. Caleb has this. This is exactly the problem. We're putting the entire company's fate in the hands of one engineer who's already proven he can't follow proper procedures. Derek, shut up! Vanessa didn't raise her voice, but the words cut through his tirade. You can either help or leave. Those are your options. He stared at her, then turned and left. Vanessa pulled up a chair next to Caleb. What can I do? Nothing. Just keep everyone calm. I need to concentrate. So she did. She fielded calls from increasingly frantic executives. She briefed the customer service manager on what to tell customers. She sent updates to Richard Chen every 15 minutes, watching the cost of the outage climb with each passing minute. Caleb worked in absolute silence, his focus complete. Janet and the other security engineers assisted where they could, but mostly they just stayed out of his way. 30 minutes passed, then 45. At the 1-hour mark, Vanessa's phone rang again. This time it was Patricia Wu, the CFO. Vanessa, the board is convening an emergency meeting at 1 p.m. They want an explanation for what's happening and a plan to prevent it from happening again. I'll be there. This is bad. You know that, right? We're looking at significant financial losses, potential regulatory violations. I know, Patricia. I'm handling it. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your aggressive security initiative just took down our entire payment processing system. Vanessa closed her eyes. I'll be at the meeting. She hung up and looked at the clock. 11:53 a.m. Just over an hour until she had to face the board and explain how her second week as CEO had resulted in a system-wide failure. Caleb, she said quietly, I need a realistic assessment. Can you fix this? He didn't look up from his screen. Yes. How confident are you? 90%. And the other 10%? Is the possibility that I'm missing something and we're completely screwed. That's not reassuring. You asked for realistic. Vanessa watched him work, his fingers never stopping, his eyes scanning lines of code faster than she could track. He looked exhausted again, the brief recovery from the weekend already burned away by stress and concentration. "If this goes badly," she said, "I want you to know it's not your fault. I'm the one who pushed for aggressive implementation. I'm the one who approved the timeline. This is on me." "Stop talking," Caleb said. "I need to focus." So she stopped talking. 12 o'clock came and went. The error messages were still cascading, but Caleb had managed to stabilize the rate. They weren't getting worse, at least. Small progress. At 12:23, something changed. The error rate suddenly dropped. Not gone, but noticeably decreased. "There," Caleb muttered. "Come on. Come on." More typing, more screens flashing past. Vanessa wanted to ask what was happening, but didn't dare break his concentration. At 12:31, the errors stopped completely. The operations center went silent, except for the hum of equipment. Everyone was staring at their screens, afraid to believe it. "Transaction processing resuming," one of the engineers said quietly. "Payment queue is clearing." "System health metrics returning to normal," another added. Caleb leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "We're good. All modules are authenticating correctly. The trust chain is rebuilt." Vanessa felt dizzy with relief. "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be. Run some test transactions to confirm, but yeah, we're good." Janet was already running the tests. They came back clean, transactions processing normally, no authentication failures, everything functioning as it should have from the start. "How did you do it?" Vanessa asked. "Manually rebuilt the trust chain for each legacy module, then created a bridging certificate that the old and new systems could both recognize. It's not elegant, but it works." He rubbed his face. "We'll need to fully update those legacy modules eventually, but this buys us time." The operations center erupted in scattered applause. Caleb looked embarrassed by it, but Vanessa saw several engineers giving him respectful nods. She checked the time. 12:38. 22 minutes until the board meeting. "I need to go brief the board," she told Caleb. "Can you document what happened and send it to me? I'll need technical details." "Give me 10 minutes. He had the documentation ready in 8. Vanessa reviewed it quickly, then headed upstairs to face the board. They were not happy. 1 hour and 47 minutes of downtime, Patricia said before Vanessa even sat down. Estimated cost in lost transactions, customer service overtime, and emergency response, $340,000, plus unknown regulatory implications. "The system is stable now," Vanessa said. "We've identified the issue and implemented a fix." "The issue you created," Derek interjected. He'd somehow gotten himself invited to the meeting. "This is exactly what happens when you rush critical infrastructure changes without proper oversight." "The changes were properly vetted," Vanessa countered. "The issue was an incompatibility with legacy modules that hadn't been documented anywhere. Because you didn't do adequate testing." "Enough." Richard Chen held up a hand. "Derek, you've made your point. Vanessa, walk us through what happened and how it was resolved." She did, using Caleb's documentation to explain the technical details. The board listened, asking pointed questions, clearly skeptical. "So Brooks fixed the problem he helped create," Derek summarized when she finished. "Brooks fixed a problem that existed because previous management failed to properly document system dependencies," Vanessa shot back. "If we'd had accurate architecture documentation, this would have been caught in testing. If you'd followed proper change management procedures, this wouldn't have happened any differently. The problem was baked into the infrastructure years ago. We just exposed it." The argument went in circles for another 20 minutes before Richard finally called for a vote on whether to continue with the security implementation. It passed, but barely. 4 in favor, 3 against. "You have one more chance," Richard told Vanessa after the meeting adjourned. "One more incident like this and the board will revisit their confidence in your leadership. Am I clear?" Crystal. She went back downstairs feeling like she'd just survived a battle. The operations center was back to normal. Quiet, orderly, functioning. Caleb was still at his workstation looking like he might fall asleep at any moment. "How'd it go?" he asked when he saw her. "I'm still CEO, for now." "That's something." "Caleb, I'm sorry. I pushed too hard on the timeline. This is my fault." He shook his head. Nobody could have predicted the legacy module issue. We did everything right. Sometimes things just break anyway. That's not very reassuring. I'm an engineer, not a motivational speaker. Despite everything, Vanessa smiled. Then she looked at him. Really looked at him. At the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way he was holding himself together through sheer willpower. Go home, she said. Spend the evening with Emma. I'll handle anything else that comes up. You sure? Completely. You've saved this company twice in 10 days. You've earned a night off. He nodded slowly, then started gathering his things. At the door, he paused. Vanessa, for what it's worth, I think you're doing a good job. Even when things go sideways, you don't run. That matters. Then he was gone, and Vanessa was alone in the operations center with the quiet hum of systems that had almost failed, but didn't. She sat down at an empty workstation and put her head in her hands. One more chance, Richard had said. One more incident, and they'd revisit their confidence in her leadership. She just had to make sure there wasn't a next incident. No pressure. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Vanessa implemented the remaining security updates with obsessive caution, triple-checking every configuration, running tests that bordered on paranoid. She attended more meetings than she'd thought humanly possible, defending her decisions to skeptical board members and hostile middle managers who saw every change as a personal attack. Derek was the worst of them. He'd pivoted from open confrontation to passive-aggressive undermining, sending carefully worded emails that questioned her judgment while maintaining plausible deniability. He'd rally support among the old guard, spreading whispers about her inexperience, her recklessness, her inability to understand how things really worked. Vanessa ignored most of it. She had bigger problems. The system outage had cost them more than $340,000. Customer complaints had spiked. 2 clients had threatened to take their business elsewhere, citing concerns about reliability. The regulatory audit that was scheduled for next month suddenly felt like a ticking bomb. One more failure and the State Banking Commission would have legitimate grounds to impose restrictions. Through it all, Caleb kept the systems running. He worked long hours again, though Vanessa tried to enforce boundaries. He'd show up at 7, leave by 6, spend evenings with Emma. But she could see the strain in his face, the way exhaustion had become his default state. You need to slow down, she told him one Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after the outage. They were in her office, reviewing the latest security metrics. You're going to burn out. I'm fine. You're not fine. You look like you haven't slept in days. Caleb set down his coffee, his 4th cup that day. Emma's been having nightmares. Her mom died in a car accident, and sometimes she wakes up scared that something's going to happen to me. I've been staying up with her until she falls back asleep. The admission hit Vanessa harder than she expected. She'd been so focused on work, on proving herself, on managing the political fallout, that she'd stopped thinking about what Caleb was dealing with outside these walls. I'm sorry, she said. Is there anything I can do? You could invent a way to add more hours to the day. He said it lightly, but there was real exhaustion underneath. I'm serious about being fine, though. This is just what life looks like sometimes. I deal with it. You shouldn't have to deal with it alone. Caleb looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. I'm not alone. I've got Emma, Mrs. Chen, and now I've got a CEO who actually listens when I say something's broken. That's more support than I've had in years. Vanessa didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and changed the subject back to the security metrics. But the conversation stayed with her for the rest of the day. That evening, she stopped by the operations center on her way out. Caleb was still there, as usual, staring at screens full of monitoring data. What time do you need to pick up Emma? She asked. 6:30. Mrs. Chen's got her until then. Vanessa checked her watch. It's almost 6 now. You should go. I want to finish reviewing these access logs first. There's been some weird traffic patterns I can't quite explain. Weird how? He pulled up a dashboard showing network activity. Nothing obviously malicious, just unusual. Queries coming from internal IP addresses at odd times, accessing modules that don't usually get touched. Could be legitimate maintenance, could be someone poking around where they shouldn't be. You think someone's trying to breach us again? I don't know. That's what's bothering me. It doesn't match any attack pattern I've seen before. He scrolled through more logs. Could be nothing. Could be Derek trying to dig up dirt on the security implementation to prove it was flawed. Could be something worse. Keep monitoring it. But Caleb, you need to go. Emma's waiting. He sighed and saved his work. You're right. I'll pick this up tomorrow. As he was leaving, Vanessa made a decision. Hey, what's Emma doing this Saturday? Caleb turned back, surprised. Nothing specific. Why? There's a science museum downtown. They've got a robotics exhibit she might like. I thought maybe, if you wanted company, I could tag along? The words came out awkward, tentative. Vanessa wasn't sure what she was offering exactly. Friendship, support, something else she didn't want to examine too closely. Caleb studied her face, clearly trying to figure out her angle. You want to spend your Saturday at a kids' science museum? I like science, and I've been meaning to do something that isn't work-related. Seems like a good opportunity? Emma's 7. She's going to ask you approximately 10,000 questions about everything. I can handle that. He smiled slightly. Okay. Saturday. Meet us there around 10? I'll be there. After he left, Vanessa sat in the operations center wondering what she'd just agreed to. She didn't do casual social activities, especially not with employees. It blurred professional boundaries, created potential HR complications, sent mixed signals. But Caleb wasn't just an employee anymore. Somewhere in the chaos of the last month, he'd become something closer to a partner, someone whose judgment she trusted, whose presence made the impossible feel manageable. And Emma. Vanessa thought about the text message with its heart emojis, about a 7-year-old girl who'd lost her mother and lived in constant fear of losing her father, too. Maybe spending a few hours making her smile wasn't the worst use of a Saturday. The museum was crowded when Vanessa arrived Saturday morning. Families everywhere, kids running between exhibits, the particular chaos of weekend educational entertainment. She spotted Caleb and Emma near the entrance, Emma practically bouncing with excitement. Vanessa! The girl ran over, her dark curls flying. Dad said you're coming with us. Do you like robots? I love robots. I want to build one someday that can help people who can't walk. Or maybe one that explores space. Or both. Can robots do both? I think they probably can, Vanessa said, charmed despite herself. That's very ambitious. Dad says I should dream big. Emma grabbed Vanessa's hand with the unselfconscious ease of childhood. Come on, the robotics exhibit is upstairs. Caleb gave Vanessa an apologetic look. Told you. 10,000 questions. I'm prepared. They spent the next 3 hours exploring exhibits. Emma was exactly as advertised, endlessly curious, perpetually in motion, asking questions faster than any adult could answer them. But she was also smart and funny and completely unguarded in a way that made Vanessa's chest ache. Why do you wear fancy clothes? Emma asked at one point, studying Vanessa's weekend outfit, which was admittedly still more formal than most people wore to a museum. Habit, I guess. I wear business clothes for work, so I'm used to it. Don't you get tired of being fancy all the time? Vanessa laughed. Sometimes, but it makes me feel professional, like I know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? The question was innocent, but it landed hard. Vanessa glanced at Caleb, who was trying not to smile. Most of the time, Vanessa said honestly, but sometimes I'm just guessing and hoping I get it right. That's okay, Emma said seriously. Dad says everyone's just guessing sometimes. The important thing is to keep trying even when you mess up. Your dad's a smart guy. I know. Emma squeezed Vanessa's hand. He talks about you a lot. He says you're very brave. Vanessa felt heat creep up her neck. He said that? Yep. He said you made a mistake, but you fixed it, and that's harder than never making mistakes at all. They moved on to the next exhibit, but Vanessa couldn't stop thinking about that. About Caleb talking about her to his daughter. About him seeing bravery in what she'd considered damage control. Around noon, they stopped for lunch in the museum cafe. Emma chattered non-stop about the exhibits while working through her mac and cheese. Caleb looked more relaxed than Vanessa had seen him in weeks, his exhaustion temporarily held at bay by his daughter's joy. Thank you for this, he said quietly, while Emma was distracted by a group of kids at the next table. She needed a good day. So did I. I'm glad I could help. She's amazing, Caleb. You're doing a really good job with her. Some days I'm not sure about that. Some days I feel like I'm barely holding it together, and she's the one keeping me afloat. That's called being a parent, I think. You have siblings? Kids? No siblings? No kids. My parents were very focused on career success, so I learned early that work came first. Family second, if at all. Vanessa surprised herself with the honesty. It made me very good at my job, but I'm not sure it made me very good at being a person. Caleb looked at her thoughtfully. You're here on a Saturday, spending time with an employee and his kid at a science museum. Seems pretty person-like to me. This is new territory. I usually spend Saturdays working or at the gym. How's that going for you? I'm very productive and in excellent shape. But sometimes I wonder if I'm missing something. If there's supposed to be more to life than quarterly reports and performance metrics. Emma chose that moment to return her attention to them. Dad, can we go see the space exhibit next? They have a real moon rock. Sure, sweetheart. Caleb stood, gathering their trash. Lead the way. The space exhibit was impressive. A genuine moon rock from the Apollo missions, interactive displays about Mars rovers, a scale model of the solar system that stretched across the entire room. Emma was fascinated by the Mars section, asking detailed questions about whether humans would ever live there. What do you think? She asked Vanessa. Will we? I think if people like you keep being curious and working hard, then yes, probably. I'm going to be an astronaut engineer, Emma declared. I'll build the robots and then go to Mars with them. That sounds perfect. They stayed until the museum closed at 5. On the way out, Emma was tired enough to lean against her father, her earlier energy depleted. This was the best day, she said sleepily. Can Vanessa come with us again sometime? Caleb met Vanessa's eyes over Emma's head. If she wants to. I'd like that, Vanessa said, and meant it. They walked to the parking garage together. Emma dozed against Caleb's shoulder while they waited for the elevator. She's going to crash hard tonight, Caleb said, which means I might actually get some sleep for once. Good. You need it. Vanessa hesitated, then added, Thank you for letting me be part of this. I didn't realize how much I needed a day that wasn't about work. Anytime. Emma clearly loves you, which is the highest endorsement possible. The elevator arrived. Caleb shifted Emma's weight carefully, and Vanessa noticed how naturally he moved with her, how attuned he was to her comfort even when she was half asleep. See you Monday? He asked. Monday. Get some rest. She watched them go, then sat in her car for a long time before driving home. Something had shifted today. Some boundary she'd carefully maintained had dissolved, and she wasn't sure how to feel about it. What she did know was that she'd enjoyed herself more in those few hours than she had in months, maybe years, and that Emma's smile when she'd grabbed Vanessa's hand had felt like something worth protecting. Monday brought new problems. The weird traffic patterns Caleb had noticed escalated over the weekend. Someone, or multiple someones, had been systematically accessing archived transaction records, pulling historical data going back 3 years. It's definitely not maintenance, Caleb said Monday morning, showing Vanessa the access logs. Whoever this is, they're being careful. Small queries spread across different times, different systems. But when you aggregate it all, there's a clear pattern. Someone's mining our historical data. Can you tell who? The credentials trace back to Derek's supervisor account. Vanessa felt her stomach drop. Derek's stealing data? Or someone compromised his account? Or he's legitimately reviewing old records for some reason? Caleb pulled up more logs. But, Vanessa, if this is what I think it is, if someone's pulling transaction data to sell or use for fraud, we're looking at a major breach. Can you lock down his access? I can, but if it's really Derek, he'll know immediately. And if it's not Derek, whoever has his credentials will just switch to a different account. What do you recommend? Caleb thought for a moment. Let me set up a trap. Give them access to a honeypot database that looks real, but is actually isolated. Then we can track exactly what they're doing without tipping them off. How long will that take? Few hours. But Vanessa, we need to loop in HR and legal. If this really is Derek, you can't just confront him. We need documentation, proper procedures. I know. I'll call Janet and schedule a meeting with legal. You set up the honeypot. By Tuesday afternoon, they had their answer. Whoever was using Derek's credentials had taken the bait, accessing the honeypot database and downloading over 50,000 transaction records. The IP addresses traced back to Derek's home computer. It's him, Janet said during the emergency meeting in Vanessa's office. Legal was there, HR, and Richard Chen calling in remotely. Derek Simmons has been systematically stealing company data for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. What's he doing with it? Richard asked through the speakerphone. Unknown. But given the type of data, customer information, transaction histories, payment details, the most likely scenario is either selling it or using it for identity fraud. Or building a case against the company, Vanessa said. He's been undermining me since I arrived. This could be him gathering ammunition. Either way, it's grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal charges, the legal counsel said. We need to act fast before he realizes we're onto him. How do we handle this? Richard asked. Everyone looked at Vanessa. This was her call. We confront him tomorrow morning, she said. Security escorts him to a conference room. We present the evidence. We give him a chance to explain. Then we terminate his employment and turn the evidence over to law enforcement. That's risky, HR warned. If he's prepared for this, he could have already destroyed evidence or transferred the data elsewhere. Then we move fast, tomorrow, 8 a.m., before he has a chance to know something's wrong. The meeting adjourned. Vanessa felt sick. She'd known Derek was hostile, but actual data theft? That was criminal. And if he'd been selling customer information, the company could face massive liability. Caleb appeared in her doorway an hour later. You okay? No. This is a disaster. If Derek's been selling data, we could be looking at regulatory fines, lawsuits, criminal investigations. Everything I've been trying to build here could collapse. Or you could be the CEO who caught the breach and protected customer data. Perspective matters. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who has to face the board when this goes public. Caleb came in and closed the door. Vanessa, you didn't create this problem. Derek did. You're just the one dealing with it. That's not failure. That's leadership. Leadership is supposed to prevent problems, not just react to them. Nobody can prevent every problem. The best you can do is handle them well when they happen. And you're handling this well. Vanessa wanted to believe him, but all she could think about was the board meeting where Richard had warned her one more incident and they'd revisit their confidence in her leadership. This was definitely an incident. I need you in the room tomorrow, she told Caleb. When we confront Derek, I need someone there who understands the technical side in case he tries to deny it or claim the data is misinterpreted. You want me at Derek's termination meeting? I want someone I trust backing me up. That's you. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll be there. That night, Vanessa barely slept. She kept running through scenarios, imagining all the ways tomorrow could go wrong. Derek could lawyer up immediately. He could claim the access was authorized. He could accuse her of targeting him for political reasons. By 7 a.m. Wednesday, she was exhausted and wired on too much coffee. Security had been briefed. The conference room was prepared, legal had the evidence printed and organized. Everything was ready. Derek arrived at his usual time, 8:15. Security intercepted him in the lobby. Mr. Simmons, we need you to come with us, please. What? Why? Miss Monroe needs to speak with you. It's urgent. Derek's face went through several emotions, confusion, suspicion, calculation. I need to check my schedule. Now, sir. They escorted him to the conference room where Vanessa waited with HR, legal, and Caleb. Derek's eyes widened when he saw the setup. What is this? Sit down, Derek. Vanessa's voice was steady. We need to discuss your unauthorized access to company databases. I don't know what you're talking about. Legal slid a folder across the table. These are access logs showing systematic data extraction from company servers using your credentials. Over 50,000 customer transaction records downloaded to your home IP address over the past 2 weeks. Derek opened the folder, his face going pale as he looked through the evidence. This is a mistake. I didn't download any. The logs are quite clear, Caleb interrupted, and we verified the IP addresses. It's your home internet connection, Derek. Not a coffee shop, not a library, your house. Someone must have stolen my credentials. You're saying someone hacked your account? Vanessa kept her tone neutral. When did you notice this? I didn't, but obviously. So you didn't notice someone using your account to access thousands of sensitive records, but you also didn't report any suspicious activity or unauthorized access. Legal's voice was sharp. That's your defense? Derek's jaw tightened. I want my lawyer. That's your right, HR said. But Derek, as of this moment, Your employment with Horizon Financial Services is terminated for cause. You'll be escorted from the building immediately. Your access to all company systems has been revoked. We'll be turning this evidence over to law enforcement for investigation of potential criminal data theft. You can't do this. We can and we are. Vanessa stood. Security will accompany you to collect your personal belongings. You have 15 minutes. Anything on company computers or servers remains company property and will be preserved as evidence. Derek looked around the room, his face red with anger and something that might have been fear. His eyes landed on Caleb. This is you, isn't it? You set me up, fed her lies about me to get rid of the competition. Caleb's expression didn't change. I set up monitoring systems to detect unauthorized data access. You're the one who accessed the data, Derek. I just documented it. You've been after my job since day one. I've been trying to do my job, which apparently threatened you enough that you decided to steal customer data. I didn't steal anything. Then you won't mind explaining that to the police. Vanessa gestured to security. Get him out of here. They escorted Derek out, his protests echoing down the hallway. When the door closed, Vanessa sat down heavily. That went about as well as expected, HR said. Which means terribly, Vanessa replied. Legal started gathering the evidence folders. We'll file the police report this afternoon. The State Banking Commission needs to be notified within 24 hours of a suspected data breach, and we should probably prepare a statement for customers. I'll draft something, Vanessa said. Caleb, can you verify that Derek doesn't still have any access to our systems? Already done. Every credential associated with his accounts has been locked out. I'm running scans now to make sure he didn't leave any back doors. The meeting ended. Vanessa stayed in the conference room after everyone left, staring at the evidence folders Legal had left behind. Caleb poked his head back in. You did the right thing, did I? We just terminated a senior employee and invited a criminal investigation into our company. The board's going to love this. The board's going to love that you caught a data thief before he could do serious damage. Spin matters, Vanessa. Since when are you an expert on corporate spin? Since I started paying attention to how you handle things. He came in and sat down across from her. You're scared. I get it. This is big and messy and could blow up in a lot of ways. But you made the right call. Derek was stealing data. You stopped him. That's what good leaders do. Vanessa wanted to believe him. What if I'm wrong? What if he really was hacked and we just destroyed his career over a misunderstanding? Then the investigation will prove that, and you'll apologize. But Vanessa, the evidence is pretty clear. This wasn't a hack. This was deliberate, systematic data theft. Yeah, she rubbed her face. I need to call Richard and give him a heads up before this hits the news. Want me to stay? No, go back to the operations center. Make sure Derek didn't sabotage anything on his way out. After Caleb left, Vanessa called Richard. The conversation went about as badly as she'd expected. A data breach? Richard's voice was tight with controlled anger. 2 months into your tenure, and we're dealing with a data breach? We're dealing with data theft by a terminated employee. That's different. Not to the regulators, it isn't. Vanessa, this is exactly the kind of incident I warned you about. I know, but we caught it early. We've locked down the systems. We're cooperating with law enforcement. We're doing everything right. That doesn't change the fact that it happened on your watch. It happened because Derek Simmons decided to steal data. I can't control employee criminal behavior. I can only respond to it, which I did, quickly and appropriately. Richard was quiet for a moment. The board's going to want a full briefing, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Be prepared to answer some very tough questions. I will be. She hung up and put her head down on the conference table. 2 months as CEO, 1 cyber attack narrowly averted, 1 system outage that cost hundreds of thousands, now a data theft scandal that could result in regulatory action. This was not how she'd imagined her leadership tenure would go. Her phone buzzed. A text from Emma. She'd apparently gotten Vanessa's number from Caleb's phone. Dad says you had a bad day. I made you a drawing to feel better. He'll bring it tomorrow. Attached was a photo of a crayon drawing showing 3 stick figures labeled Dad, Emma, and Vanessa standing under a rainbow. Vanessa stared at that drawing for a long time. Then she saved it to her phone and went back to work. The board meeting Thursday morning was brutal. They wanted answers, explanations, assurances that this wouldn't happen again. Vanessa provided all of it, backed by detailed reports from legal, IT security, and law enforcement. The bottom line, she said, is that Derek Simmons exploited his authorized access to steal customer data. We caught him because Caleb Brooks noticed unusual access patterns and investigated. We responded immediately, terminated his employment, and turned the evidence over to police. We've notified the Banking Commission as required and are preparing customer notifications. This was not a system vulnerability. This was an employee making criminal choices. But it still happened, Patricia Wu pointed out, and it still reflects poorly on our security culture. Which is exactly why I've been pushing for comprehensive security improvements, better monitoring, better access controls, better audit trails, all things that previous management neglected and that I'm working to fix. The questions continued for another hour. When it was finally over, Richard pulled Vanessa aside. "You handled that well," he said. "Better than I expected, honestly. Does that mean the board still has confidence in me?" "For now. But Vanessa, you're running out of chances. This company can't afford any more crises." "I know." She walked back to her office feeling like she'd aged 10 years in 2 months. Crisis management was exhausting. Being constantly on trial was exhausting. Trying to fix decades of neglect while dealing with active sabotage was exhausting. Caleb was waiting in her office with coffee and the drawing Emma had made. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her both. Vanessa looked at the drawing. It was even more charming in person, with Emma's careful labeling and enthusiastic use of every color in the crayon box. "Tell Emma thank you. This actually helps." "She'll be thrilled." Caleb sat down. "How bad was it?" "Could have been worse. I'm still employed." "That's good. I'd hate to have to break in a new CEO." Despite everything, Vanessa smiled. "How are the systems looking?" "Clean." Derek didn't leave any surprises, and the police took copies of all the evidence. They're treating this as potential identity theft and fraud. Derek's looking at serious charges if they can prove he sold or used the data. "Good." Vanessa set the drawing on her desk where she could see it. "Caleb, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "How do you do this? Keep going when everything feels like it's falling apart?" He thought about it for a moment. "I look at Emma. I think about the kind of life I want her to have. And I remember that giving up isn't an option when someone depends on you. So I just keep moving forward, even when I'm terrified and exhausted and convinced I'm doing everything wrong. Does it get easier? Sometimes, but mostly you just get better at pretending you have everything under control." Vanessa laughed, surprised by how much she needed to hear that. "Thanks. That's oddly reassuring." "I'm full of odd reassurances." He stood to leave, then paused. "Emma wanted me to invite you to dinner Friday night. Nothing fancy, just pizza and a movie at our place. She's worried you're sad and thinks pizza fixes everything." "She's not wrong about that." "So is that a yes?" Vanessa looked at the drawing again, at the 3 stick figures standing together under a rainbow. "Yes, I'd like that." "Good. Because she's already picked out the movie, and I didn't have the heart to tell her you might say no." After he left, Vanessa sat at her desk feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Not that everything would magically fix itself, but that maybe she didn't have to face all of it alone. She had a company to save, a board to satisfy, and probably more crises waiting just around the corner. But she also had Caleb, who saw her mistakes and helped her fix them, and Emma, who made crayon drawings and believed pizza could solve anything. Maybe that would be enough. Friday evening found Vanessa standing outside Caleb's apartment with a bottle of wine she'd spent too long picking out and nerves she couldn't quite explain. This was just dinner with an employee and his kid. Nothing complicated, nothing that required the kind of anxiety currently making her hands sweat. She knocked before she could overthink it further. Emma answered immediately, wearing pajamas covered in cartoon rockets. "You came! Dad said you might be too busy, but I knew you'd come. I wouldn't miss it." Vanessa held up the wine. "I brought this for your dad, and I got you something too." She pulled out a small gift bag containing a book about famous women engineers and scientists. Emma's eyes went wide. "For me? Really?" "Really, I thought you might like it." Emma grabbed the book and immediately started flipping through it, already absorbed. Caleb appeared from the kitchen, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that had seen better days, looking more relaxed than Vanessa had ever seen him at work. You didn't have to bring anything, he said, taking the wine. I wanted to. Besides, showing up empty-handed to dinner felt wrong. The apartment was small but warm, with Emma's artwork covering every available wall space and books stacked on every surface. A worn couch dominated the living room, facing a modest TV. Through the doorway, Vanessa could see a tiny kitchen where pizza boxes were already set out on the counter. Sorry about the mess, Caleb said, moving a pile of laundry off the couch. We weren't really prepared for company. It's fine, it's lived in. I like it. And she did. Her own apartment was pristine and sterile, decorated by a professional, everything in its place. This felt like an actual home. Emma picked the movie, Caleb warned. Some animated thing about talking animals saving the world. I've already seen it 4 times, but she insists it's better on the 5th viewing. It is better, Emma called from where she was still engrossed in her book. Because you notice more things each time. They ate pizza on the couch, Emma wedged between them, providing running commentary on every scene of the movie despite having seen it multiple times. Vanessa found herself laughing more than she had in months, caught up in Emma's enthusiasm and the sheer normalcy of it all. This part is my favorite, Emma said, pointing at the screen. Watch what the little mouse does, see? He's scared, but he does it anyway because his friends need him. That's called being brave, Caleb said. I know. Like Vanessa. She gets scared, but she does things anyway. Vanessa looked down at Emma, surprised. What makes you think I get scared? Dad says everyone gets scared. But brave people do the right thing even when they're scared. And you fired that mean man who was stealing stuff even though it was hard. Vanessa met Caleb's eyes over Emma's head. He shrugged slightly, a small smile on his face. Your dad talks about work a lot, huh? Vanessa said. Only the important stuff. He said you're trying to fix things that have been broken for a long time. That takes guts. Emma returned her attention to the movie. That's what the mouse does too, fixes broken things. The movie ended around 8. Emma was yawning despite her insistence that she wasn't tired at all. Bedtime, Caleb said firmly. But Vanessa's still here, and she'll still be here tomorrow. Say goodnight. Emma hugged Vanessa with the fierce, unself-conscious affection of a 7-year-old. Thank you for the book, and for coming, and for being nice to my dad. Thank you for inviting me, Vanessa said, her throat suddenly tight. After Caleb tucked Emma in, he returned to the living room with 2 glasses of the wine Vanessa had brought. Sorry about the interrogation, he said, handing her a glass. She gets attached to people quickly, especially people who are kind to her. I don't mind. She's wonderful, Caleb. You're raising an incredible kid. I'm trying. Some days I have no idea what I'm doing. He sat down on the other end of the couch, leaving deliberate space between them. But she makes it easier. Having someone who believes in you unconditionally is powerful. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping wine. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and Emma's music box playing softly from her room. Can I ask you something? Vanessa said finally. Sure. That first morning when I found you at your desk, what were you really thinking when I fired you? Caleb considered the question. Honestly, I was thinking that I'd failed. That I'd spent 2 days fighting to protect something just to get punished for it. And I was thinking about Emma, about how I was going to tell her I lost my job again. Again? I got laid off about 3 years ago from my previous company. Budget cuts. Took me 4 months to find work, and we burned through our savings. Emma was too young to understand, but she knew something was wrong, knew I was stressed. When I finally got the job at Horizon, I promised her things would be stable. He looked down at his wine. Then you fired me, and I thought I'd broken that promise. Vanessa felt the familiar guilt settle in her chest. I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but stop. Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. You've apologized enough. And honestly, everything that came after made up for it. You listened when I came back. You trusted me to fix the system. You backed me up with Derek. You've done more for me in 2 months than any other boss has done in years. I fired you. And then you unfired me and gave me a raise and invited me to help restructure the security department and spent your Saturday at a kid's museum making my daughter smile. He met her eyes. You made a mistake and then you spent 2 months making it right. That matters more than the initial mistake. Emma said something similar, about being brave meaning you do the right thing even when it's hard. She's smarter than both of us. Vanessa laughed. Probably true. They talked for another hour, the conversation drifting from work to life to everything in between. Caleb told her about his wife, about the car accident that had taken her, about learning to be a single parent while drowning in grief. Vanessa talked about her family, about the pressure to succeed, about building a career that looked perfect from the outside while feeling hollow on the inside. Do you regret it? Caleb asked. The career focus, I mean. Sometimes I've accomplished a lot, but I look at what you have with Emma and wonder what I missed by always putting work first. Vanessa swirled the wine in her glass. Although lately I've been wondering if maybe it's not too late to have something more balanced. It's never too late. You're 30. You've got time to figure out what you actually want instead of just what you're supposed to want. What do you want? Besides stability for Emma. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. I want to stop feeling like I'm one bad day away from everything falling apart. I want Emma to grow up knowing she's safe and loved, and that she can dream as big as she wants. And I want... He trailed off, seeming to reconsider. What? I want someone to share it with, the good days and the bad days, someone who gets it. He looked at her, and Vanessa felt something shift in the air between them. Someone like you, actually. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Caleb, I know, terrible timing. You're my boss. It's inappropriate. HR would have a field day. He set down his wine glass. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel something here. These last 2 months, working with you, watching you fight for what's right, even when it's hard, I haven't felt this connected to someone since before my wife died. Vanessa should have shut this down immediately, should have reminded him of professional boundaries, power dynamics, all the very good reasons this couldn't happen. But instead she said, I feel it too. Yeah? Yeah. And it terrifies me because I don't know how to do this, how to be someone's boss and also whatever this is. We could figure it out, together. Caleb moved closer, not touching but near enough that Vanessa could feel the warmth of him. Or we could pretend this conversation never happened and go back to being strictly professional. Could we actually do that? Probably not, but we could try. Vanessa looked at him, really looked at him, at the exhaustion that had become permanent around his eyes, at the way he held himself like he was ready for the next crisis, at the gentleness in his expression when he looked at her. This man who'd saved her company twice and forgiven her for firing him and raised a daughter who believed pizza could fix everything. I don't want to try, she said quietly. Caleb kissed her. It was tentative at first, testing, but when Vanessa leaned into it, something unlocked. 2 months of tension and worry and crisis management melted into this moment. Just two people who'd been through something difficult together and come out the other side. When they pulled apart, Caleb was smiling. That was a terrible idea that we're definitely going to have to disclose to HR, Vanessa finished. Worth it, though. Absolutely worth it. They talked until almost midnight, working through the practicalities. They'd need to disclose the relationship. They'd need to establish boundaries at work. They'd probably need to restructure reporting lines so Caleb didn't directly report to Vanessa anymore. Janet can be your direct supervisor, Vanessa suggested. You'd still be in the security division, just not reporting straight to me. That works, although people are still going to talk. Let them talk. I'm tired of making decisions based on what other people think. Caleb walked her to the door around midnight. Same time next week? He asked. I'd like that, although maybe we could go somewhere, get dinner, just the two of us. Like a date? Exactly like a date. He kissed her again, softer this time. I'll make reservations. Vanessa drove home feeling lighter than she had in months. Yes, this was complicated. Yes, there would be challenges, but for the first time since becoming CEO, she felt like she had something in her life besides work. Someone who understood the pressure, who'd seen her at her worst and stayed anyway. Monday morning, she called HR and disclosed the relationship. There was paperwork, meetings, lots of discussion about potential conflicts of interest. By Wednesday, they had a plan. Caleb would report to Janet Park with clear documentation that any promotion or compensation decisions would go through an independent review board. This is going to be the talk of the office, the HR director warned. I know, but we're doing this by the book. No favoritism, no special treatment, complete transparency. And if it doesn't work out, then we'll handle it professionally. But right now, I'm choosing to be optimistic. The news spread through the company exactly as fast as Vanessa had expected, which is to say, immediately. By Thursday morning, everyone knew the CEO was dating the senior security engineer she'd fired and rehired on her first day. Maria from the operations center pulled Vanessa aside. Is it true? Yes. About time. We've been running a betting pool on when you two would figure it out. Vanessa blinked. A betting pool? Janet won. She called it after the museum trip with his daughter. Maria smiled. For what it's worth, we're happy for you. Brooks is good people, and you've been good for this place. Seems right that you'd be good for each other. Not everyone was supportive. There were whispers about professionalism, about the CEO showing favoritism, about Vanessa letting personal feelings compromise her judgment. But there were also people like Maria, like the engineers who'd watched Caleb save the company twice, who saw this as two people who'd earned something good. The board was less enthusiastic. A relationship with a direct report, Patricia Wu said during their next meeting. Vanessa, the optics of this are being handled appropriately. We've restructured reporting lines. We've disclosed everything to HR. We're following every protocol. It still looks like the new CEO got personally involved with an employee within her first 2 months. It looks like two people who went through a crisis together developed feelings for each other. Which happens. We're handling it responsibly. Richard Chen surprisingly came to her defense. Let's be honest. If Vanessa were a male CEO dating a female employee, we'd probably just congratulate him and move on. We can't hold her to a different standard. That's not what this is about, Patricia protested. Isn't it? Look, I agree they need to be careful about appearances, but they've done everything right from a compliance standpoint. Unless someone has actual concerns about favoritism or policy violations, I think we should focus on more important issues. The discussion moved on, but Vanessa felt the undercurrent. Her relationship with Caleb would be scrutinized, judged, used as ammunition by anyone who wanted to undermine her authority. She decided she didn't care. That Friday, she and Caleb had their first official date. He picked her up at 7, wearing a button-down shirt that actually fit properly, looking nervous in a way that was endearing. Emma helped me pick out the shirt, he admitted. She said I needed to dress up for someone important. Smart kid. They went to a small Italian place that Caleb swore had the best pasta in the city. Over dinner, they talked about everything except work. Emma's latest school project, Vanessa's disastrous attempt at learning to cook, Caleb's dream of someday building a house with a workshop where he could teach Emma engineering. You want to build a house? Vanessa asked. Someday, when I've saved enough. I want Emma to have a yard, a real home, not just an apartment we're renting month to month. He smiled self-consciously. It's probably a fantasy, real estate prices being what they are. It's a good fantasy and more achievable than you think, especially with the raise you're getting. About that, it was approved before we started dating. Janet pushed it through based on your performance during the crisis. Don't feel guilty about accepting it. Still feels weird. Then feel weird and take the money anyway. You've earned it. After dinner, they walked through the park near Vanessa's apartment, talking until the streetlights came on. Caleb held her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, and Vanessa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Contentment. Not the achievement high of closing a deal or hitting targets, but the quiet satisfaction of being with someone who understood her. I should get back, Caleb said eventually. Mrs. Chen's great, but I don't like leaving Emma too long. I understand. Same time next week? Actually, Emma wanted to know if you'd come to her school science fair next Thursday. She's building a solar-powered robot, and she's very proud of it. I'd love to. He kissed her goodnight, and Vanessa went upstairs feeling like her life had finally started making sense. The following weeks settled into a rhythm. Work during the day, where Vanessa and Caleb maintained professional boundaries. Evenings and weekends where they built something that felt like a real relationship. Emma became a constant presence in Vanessa's life, with her endless questions and her absolute faith that the three of them belonged together. Are you going to marry my dad? Emma asked one Saturday while they were building a model bridge together. Emma! Caleb looked mortified from across the room. What? I'm just asking. You guys are dating. That's what people do when they date. They get married. Sometimes, Vanessa said carefully, but we're taking things slow, getting to know each other better first. But you like him, right? I do, very much. And he likes you. I can tell because he smiles more now. And he doesn't look so tired all the time. Vanessa glanced at Caleb, who was definitely blushing. I'm glad he's smiling more. Me too, so maybe you could get married eventually. Then we could all live together and I could have a mom again. The casual way Emma said it broke Vanessa's heart. This little girl who'd lost so much, who just wanted a complete family again. Emma, sweetheart, Caleb said gently, coming over to sit with them. Vanessa cares about you a lot. We both know that. But being together and being a family isn't something that happens overnight. It takes time. I know, I'm just saying eventually, not like tomorrow or anything. Eventually is a good timeline, Vanessa agreed, squeezing Emma's hand. That night, after Emma was asleep, Caleb apologized. I'm sorry about the marriage interrogation. She gets ideas in her head. Don't apologize, it was sweet. And honestly, the idea of eventually doesn't scare me as much as it probably should. Caleb looked at her seriously. You mean that? I mean, I'm not running away. I'm not making promises about timelines or grand plans. But I'm here, Caleb. I want to see where this goes. Even with all the complications? The kid, the baggage, the weird work situation? Especially with all that. It's real. It's messy and complicated and nothing like what I thought I wanted, but it feels right. He pulled her close, and they sat together on the worn couch while Emma's music box played distantly from her room. 3 months after that disastrous first morning, Vanessa called an all-company meeting. The operations center had been completely overhauled. New security systems, updated infrastructure, proper monitoring protocols. The independent security audit had come back with ratings that actually made her proud. I want to start by acknowledging something, she said, standing in front of the assembled employees. My first day as CEO, I made a terrible mistake. I fired Caleb Brooks without understanding what was actually happening. I let my own assumptions override the evidence in front of me, and I nearly cost this company the one person who could save it. The room was silent. Caleb, standing near the back with Janet and the security team, looked uncomfortable with the attention. But what I learned from that mistake, Vanessa continued, is that leadership isn't about never being wrong. It's about what you do when you are wrong. It's about listening, learning, making things right. Over the past 3 months, we've faced cyber attacks, system failures, data theft, and more challenges than any company should face in a year. And we've survived all of it because of people like Caleb who refuse to give up even when things look impossible. She gestured toward the security team. I'm proud to announce that we've been recertified by the State Banking Commission with no sanctions. Our security infrastructure now meets or exceeds industry standards. Customer confidence is at a 5-year high, and we're positioned for sustainable growth because we finally have the foundation to support it. Applause rippled through the room. None of this would have been possible without the engineers, analysts, and support staff who put in the hard work, especially our security division under Janet Park's leadership, and especially Caleb Brooks, who I'm promoting to Director of Security Engineering effective immediately. More applause, louder this time. Caleb looked genuinely shocked. The promotion was approved by the board and went through independent review, Vanessa added, making sure everyone understood this was legitimate. Caleb earned this through his exceptional technical skill and his dedication to protecting this company. He saved us more times than I can count, and it's time we recognize that officially. After the meeting, people clustered around Caleb offering congratulations. Vanessa watched from a distance, letting him have the moment. Eventually, he made his way over to her. You didn't tell me about the promotion, he said. I wanted it to be a surprise. You earned it, Caleb, completely independent of our relationship. I know. Janet already gave me the whole speech about merit and qualifications. He smiled. Still feels surreal, though. Director, me. Director Brooks has a nice ring to it. Emma's going to lose her mind when I tell her. That evening, the 3 of them celebrated with Emma's favorite meal, chicken nuggets and French fries, and a cake that said, "Congratulations, Director Dad," in wobbly frosting letters that Emma had insisted on doing herself. Does this mean we're rich now? Emma asked through a mouthful of cake. It means we're stable, Caleb said, and that's better than rich. Can we get a dog? Maybe. Eventually. Eventually is my favorite word now, Emma declared. It means good things are coming, but you have to be patient. Vanessa caught Caleb's eye and smiled. Emma was right. Eventually did mean good things were coming. 2 weeks later, Vanessa and Caleb were having lunch in her office, a rare midday break from the constant demands, when Richard Chen called with news. "The board wants to offer you a contract extension," he said. 3 years with a significant compensation increase. "They're impressed with how you've turned things around." Vanessa put the phone on speaker so Caleb could hear. "That's good news." "It is. You've done what we hired you to do, brought accountability, fixed systemic problems, positioned us for growth. There were doubts after the first couple months, but you've more than proven yourself." After the call ended, Caleb raised his water bottle in a mock toast. "Congratulations, CEO Monroe. You survived." "We survived. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Sure you could have. You just would have had to work harder and make more mistakes first." "Thanks for the vote of confidence." "Always." He reached across the desk and took her hand. "You know, Emma asked me again yesterday when we're getting married." "What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that we're taking things one day at a time, but that I'm hoping eventually includes that." Vanessa's heart did that complicated thing again. "Me too." "Yeah?" "Yeah. No timeline, no pressure, but eventually." She squeezed his hand. "I never thought I'd be the kind of person who wanted this. The relationship, the family thing, the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of it. I thought I just wanted success. And now? Now I think maybe success looks different than I thought. Maybe it's not just quarterly reports and board approvals. Maybe it's having someone to share the hard days with. Maybe it's a 7-year-old who makes me drawings when I'm sad. Maybe it's building something that matters with someone who matters." Caleb smiled. "That's a good definition. I learned it from a very smart engineer." 6 months after that first disastrous morning, Vanessa stood in the lobby of Horizon Financial Services watching Caleb walk in with Emma. It was Bring Your Kid to Work Day, and Emma had been excited about it for weeks. Emma ran over immediately. "Vanessa, Dad's going to show me the operations center, and I get to see where you work, and—" She stopped, noticing something. "Is that my drawing on your wall?" Vanessa followed her gaze to where Emma's rainbow picture was framed and hanging in the lobby, part of a small display of employee family artwork. "It is. I kept it in my office for a while, but then I thought other people should get to see it too. It reminds me that even on bad days, there's always something good to hold on to." Emma hugged her fiercely. "You can keep it forever if you want." "I'd like that." She watched them head to the elevators, Emma chattering nonstop, while Caleb listened with that patient smile he reserved just for his daughter. Then they were gone, and Vanessa was left alone in the lobby with the rainbow drawing and the realization that she'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. It had started with judgment, snap decisions made in ignorance, mistakes that could have destroyed everything. But it had become something else, something built on honesty and forgiveness, and the willingness to keep showing up even when things got hard. Vanessa's phone buzzed, a text from Caleb. "Emma wants to know if you can have dinner with us tonight. She's making spaghetti. I'm told your attendance is mandatory." Vanessa smiled and typed back, "I'll be there," because that was what mattered now. Not the perfect decision or the flawless execution or the image of controlled competence, but showing up, being present, letting people see her mistakes and trusting them to help fix them. She'd fired the man who saved her company, then she'd spent 6 months learning what it meant to be saved by him in return. And somewhere in that mess of crisis and forgiveness and late-night conversations, she'd found not just a partner, but a family. The operations center hummed quietly in the background. Somewhere upstairs, Emma was probably asking Caleb 1,000 questions about how everything worked. The systems were stable, the company was thriving, and for the first time in her life, Vanessa felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not because everything was perfect, but because the imperfect felt like home. She went back to work with Emma's drawing watching over the lobby, a reminder that sometimes the best things come from the worst mistakes, that dignity can be restored, that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt stronger than before, and that maybe, just maybe, the man she'd found asleep at his desk on her worst day had turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to her.